They're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
The second murder victim in the Nottingham attacks is named as 19-year-old Grace Kumar.
Good morning to you at 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 14th of June. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news this morning, students Grace Kumar and Barnaby Webber have been named amongst the 3 murdered in the attacks in Nottingham yesterday. A 31-year-old man is in custody, with police saying they are keeping an open mind regarding the motive.
Boris Johnson has hit out at the Privileges Committee, calling their report nonsense and urging them to publish it. It comes after they received last-minute representations from Johnson's team, which will likely delay publishing of the findings.
Appoint a real special prosecutor to go after the most corrupt president in the history of the United States of America, Joe Biden.
And while you've been sleeping, Donald Trump has hit out at his political opponents, accusing them of trying to rig the election with court cases. He was speaking in New Jersey directly after he entered a plea of not guilty of mishandling classified documents.
ITV CEO Carolyn McCall will face a grilling by MPs, where she'll be quizzed on the broadcaster's approach to safeguarding and complaint handling in the wake of Philip Schofield's affair.
In sport, the Three Lions prepare for the Euro qualifiers.
Still 2 games to go. The football season's not over yet, and the transfer window opens today too.
And as the heat wave continues, we'll have the latest forecast. It's nice, it's very nice in the morning.
I love a heat wave, I can't deny.
Yes, that's a song too. We're having a heat wave.
We could just sing the programme. I think that should be the new headlines.
The temperature's rising, it isn't surprising. We're having a heat wave.
Another day of blue skies for the vast majority, staying fine for much of the rest of this week. We could start to see a change with our weather into the weekend. For a full forecast, join me later.
Our top story this morning, two 19-year-old students, Grace Kumar and Barnaby Webber, have been named as two of the victims in the attacks in Nottingham in the early hours of yesterday morning.
A man in his 50s was also killed, with police believing the suspect stole his van and then used it to drive into three other members of public.
That man, a 31-year-old, is in custody. Police saying they're keeping an open mind regarding his motives. GBNews sources have suggested the suspect is a West African migrant with a history of violence.
Well, we're joined now by the host of Protect and Serve podcast and former police officer Oliver Lawrence. Good morning to you, Oliver.
Morning.
We're conscious that it's around 24 hours since the first arrest was made, so we expect to get an update on whether or not the police are going to get more time to question him or indeed release him. The fact that counter-terrorism police have been stood down kind of gives us an insight into what they're thinking. What do you interpret as the kind of where we're at with the police investigation?
Yeah, well, the first 24 hours in any sort of major police investigation is a critical time for the police to gather all the facts and to better understand what occurred. An incredibly tragic incident where we've lost 3 lives to an abhorrent act. There are calls this morning that there is some issues around mental health. Obviously, it's my knowledge that counter-terrorism policing has stepped back to allow local police to sort of lead on the investigation now to better understand the individual, his antecedents. There is some level of knowledge of his background and history of violence. But the police do need to have a good opportunity now to work around the clock. There'll be a number of experts working around a number of crime scenes, both primary and secondary, along with family liaison officers who will be supporting the families who are absolutely devastated this morning.
Oliver, I mean, as you say, absolutely devastated. And when you see the newspapers today and pictures which we'll run here of the two young victims, their whole lives ahead of them. Does this affect in any way, the police say they're keeping an open mind, does this in any way affect the UK threat level, terror threat level?
I don't believe it will at this stage, no, because I don't believe there's any indication that it was terror-related. And I think, as you say...
What is that level at the moment?
Well, it's substantial at the moment, which means a terrorist threat is likely. So I think, like with every community messaging, and in the modern age, we all have to be very aware of what is going on around us. Equally, police are always very keen for us to report any sort of unusual behaviour of maybe family members or friends. So I think it's important the police are given the space and the opportunity to make the correct assessments, not jump to any sort of conclusions. Obviously, yesterday's primary concern for police would have been public safety, making sure there were no secondary individuals involved. Police have ruled that out, that they're dealing with this single individual who is in police custody, and that investigation will now take place and will be lengthy and complex.
And we understand that this individual wasn't known to security services. It seems as though this was some sort of lone wolf attack. But as Eamonn was saying, the details now coming out about those students. Barnaby Webber, 19, he was from Taunton in Somerset and a keen cricketer, family absolutely devastated. And walking home from a party after exams had finished, University of Nottingham, very competitive and academic university, bright young things. And he was with Grace Kumar, who played hockey for England. And as Eamonn said, the whole world ahead of them, the whole future ahead of them. Really devastating for all involved, as well as the 50-year-old victim.
It is a complete tragedy, and one the families will be completely numb to this morning, understanding why. And it's important for the police to be able to support them. They'll have an incredible team around them, providing that support and guidance. Nothing prepares you for something like this. But importantly, the families, hopefully in the coming days, will better understand why this has happened, what occurred, and what exactly the circumstances were. And obviously the individual is in custody and will obviously face questions from police.
Oliver, we're coming to the end of university terms, and graduations and things will begin to happen. But I bet you there are a lot of students who now just want to get out of there, want to get out of Nottingham, and for all associated with it because of this, because of what this man has done.
Undoubtedly, and I think you'll probably see a significantly increased presence of police in Nottingham as a result of this, because it's important that the community recognises that the police are there to support them, and ultimately policing will make sure that it is visible
And people have to be sure that it is safe to go back out on the street.
100%, and the police will no doubt come out in the coming hours and advise updates on the environment. Obviously, there are cordons in place currently. There will be a lot of police in the area, and police will not bring down those cordons until they're satisfied they've collected all the crucial evidence. But like I say, there is one individual in police custody. They don't believe there's anybody else involved in this. We can't rule out there may be further arrests which are made. Who knows? The investigation is very, very early on in its stages. Raids were done on properties that the individual was related to. But equally, as you're quite rightly pointing out, people will be concerned and anxious in the coming days.
OK. Thank you very much indeed. Oliver Lawrence, a host of Protect and Serve podcasts and also a former police officer. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Boris Johnson has set out at the Privileges Committee. He says their report is nonsense and urges them to publish it straight away.
However, despite it originally being set to be published today, it could be delayed after last-minute representations from his own legal team late on Monday night.
Leon Emirali, political analyst, is with us now. The delay then seems to be caused by late submissions from Mr Johnson himself, though.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing games here. I think that much is evident. And there is this political groundswell behind Boris Johnson that is making this particularly tricky for the current government, because we are now seeing this spill over just from being a Boris Johnson incident into actually being an incident that impacts a number of his supporters. We've seen those resignations, those by-elections to come. This is just the beginning of a series of big headaches for Rishi Sunak.
And ultimately, we're expecting this report, when it is published, to show that he recklessly misled Parliament, and it all is pinned on this suggestion that he'd been advised that the rules had been followed at all time, which the inquiry don't accept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm hearing, rumours that it's actually unanimous on that Privileges Committee that they say he willfully misled Parliament. And what we have to remember is that is the great cardinal sin for MPs, is misleading Parliament. I remember when I was in Westminster, before your minister speaks at the dispatch box, you fact-check everything, you double-check to make sure they're saying everything that is entirely accurate. And clearly it's taken very seriously if that isn't to be the case, which is what the Privileges Committee are likely to say. So Boris Johnson is trying to discredit it. It's almost quite Trumpian, actually, in the way...
It's like the same story to me. Whatever's happening to Trump and Johnson and their objections, and it's everybody but their fault. Yeah. It's just... It's like one story.
Yeah, I mean, it's a striking similarities that this is running concurrently with what Donald Trump's going on in America and what's happening here in Westminster with Boris Johnson. And I do think both of them play from the same playbook. And, Boris is calling the committee a kangaroo court. He's calling it nonsense. Well, this is a democratically elected committee within Parliament of a number of MPs. They're not, Labour MPs. There are twice the amount of Tory MPs on that committee that there are Labour MPs. And I think it has to be taken seriously, what they find. But Boris is obviously going to go down with a fight. That's the way he works.
But, his allegation that it's a kangaroo court and suggesting that they have kicked him out of Parliament, our view is many of those are Boris supporters. Just explain how that is just factually untrue, because it actually would be part of a democratic process, which he was just clearly not prepared to face, which would ultimately have ended in an election in his own constituency.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's jumped before he was pushed, and, that's his prerogative.
Pushed by the electorate.
Pushed by the electorate, ultimately. And I think, that is his great downfall here, is he is a great believer in freedom and democracy. We've heard that from Boris a number of times. That's one of his great strengths. But what he's doing now is undermining that democracy, because that Privileges Committee are made up of elected MPs. They are then elected by the other MPs to serve on that committee. So it is, it's not something which has been made up to punish Boris Johnson. It's something that is there to ensure that MPs follow the rules. And Boris knows the rules. He's been in Parliament long enough. He's been around politics long enough that he should know the rules. And clearly, it seems he's broken those. And I think he has to face the consequences. Otherwise, it does make a mockery of the system. And he has to face up to it. He has done by resigning, but I think he would have found himself in that situation anyway.
Well, as Eamonn was saying, the story with Trump is sometimes, the parallels are made. And people are saying even if Trump is sent to jail, he could still end up being president. Do you think, even if the...
he can pardon himself.
And then he could pardon himself.
Yeah.
But in the case of Boris Johnson, when we see this report, we must stress we haven't yet seen this report by the Privileges Committee, but when we see it, if they do say that he committed what you describe as a cardinal sin, we could still see him coming back to frontline politics.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't as serious as the Trump situation in that, you know, this isn't a criminal act, but it is against the rules of Parliament, so it seems, and, you know, that doesn't preclude him from returning.
But you see, do you know, Leon, I totally get what you're saying, my friend, but I think it is as serious, and I think there is a complete lack of a moral compass with Donald Trump and with Boris Johnson. And it doesn't really matter that they've got to look at the optics, and they've said, does it even look as if I've done wrong? Does it look as if I've abused my position? Is my position untenable? There must be no mirrors in their own house.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, Eamonn, when these issues happen, their popularity rises. Certainly with the case of Donald Trump, and we are seeing it with Boris Johnson, that his supporters, you know, are saying this is a witch hunt. So in their political ambitions, this is actually quite helpful to them. And, you know, even if Boris Johnson ends up coming back in a couple of years in a plum seat and maybe, you know, launching a bid for leadership, Donald Trump can run behind bars if it gets to it. You know, that is the state we're in.
And I should just reflect, I mean, straight away, and I know this would happen, you know, the Boris supporters do get upset by the coverage of the story. Robert Stevenson has come out and the allegations of it being a kangaroo court. He accepts, he says this committee was always going to find Boris Johnson guilty. They wanted him out of Parliament, and the chairman, Harriet Harman of the committee, openly said he was guilty before the investigation began. And, you know, there's lots and lots of emails saying Boris bashing. I mean, how do you respond to that? I mean, what do we...
Yeah, look, I get that, and if you like Boris Johnson, you think he's a good Prime Minister, and I think he's got many, many positives to him, but he's flawed, and his flaw is that he doesn't play by the rules, or he thinks the rules don't apply to him. And this isn't a kangaroo court, I'll reiterate. There are twice the number of Tory MPs on that committee that there are Labour MPs, and Harriet Harman is not some sort of firebrand who's going to go out there and act in a partisan manner. She is an elder stateswoman of Parliament. She's been there and done it, and she's going to act in the accordance of the committee.
The truth often hurts, and Boris Johnson is a proven liar. Donald Trump is a proven liar. Philip Schofield is a proven liar. But you put these people together and they can counter what is said against them. But a lie unchallenged, and this is what I'm talking about, the morality of things, a lie unchallenged becomes the truth. And they just think by saying, no, it didn't happen, it didn't happen. But it seems to have happened. That is the thing. But it's a terrible situation that we find today's society. And the difference, Leon, is social media. I mean, if this had have happened in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, even in the 90s, there was not the strength of social media to fight against and to have another say in all of this, and that's what leaves us. So, and the thing is, you cannot question these people without being seen as treacherous or whatever, instead of just having an independent mind on it. But we've got your opinions, we register your opinions, and Isabel, I think it's fair to say that the opinions are like 2/3, 1/3 in favour of Boris Johnson.
Yeah, possibly even higher. Just while we're talking, I see messages coming in saying witch hunt, kangaroo court. People do really support and trust in Boris Johnson. So we know we will reflect those views throughout the course of the morning. Leon, as ever, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Thanks, Leon. Hear from you again. Thank you. Well, so to the Donald Trump situation. Let's find out what's happening there. He has entered a plea of not guilty, not surprisingly, to 37 criminal counts related to the mishandling of classified documents. So you've probably seen the pictures of all these boxes piled up in his loo because he's got nowhere to put them. I think that was quite comforting because we all think we're the only people in the world that haven't got enough storage space, and he's got this
in the shower
mansion which has got 97 rooms or whatever it is, and he still has to put them in the shower and the loo and all that sort of thing. Anyway, the whole case is unprecedented, and it makes Trump the first current or former president to face federal charges.
Well, he flew from the courtroom in Miami to a fundraising event in New Jersey straight afterwards, and Mr. Trump hit back at his political opponents. Let's take a listen.
Threatening me with 400 years in prison for possessing my own presidential papers, which just about every other president has done, is one of the most outrageous and vicious legal theories ever put forward in an American court of law. I will appoint a real special prosecutor to go after the most corrupt president in the history of the United States of America, Joe Biden.
Well, there we go. We're joined now by former advisor to Presidents Clinton and Bush, Steve Gill, who joins us with his thoughts. Oh, Steve, we have a tradition in the United Kingdom called pantomime, and there's always a villain in pantomime, and these play out at Christmas time and whatever, and people go and see this. This is a pantomime beyond belief, and Donald Trump is the villain at the centre of it. And people quite like the villain, don't they? They boo and they hiss, but they really secretly applaud the villain. How's he doing with all of this?
First, I think I've come to the conclusion that both he and Boris Johnson are under attack because of hairstyle. Both of them have similar hairstyles. Maybe that's what's attracting the attacks. Yeah, he's doing good in terms of the political polls. It's interesting that the more he gets hit, the better he does, not only in the Republican primary, as I think people there clearly see that this is a persecution, not a prosecution. And I think the injustice that we've seen from the Department of Justice, the FBI, these agencies have been weaponized by the Biden administration. And you see a different set of standards in terms of how President Trump is being treated with respect to documents than you saw Hillary Clinton, who destroyed thousands of documents that were in her possession, actually took hammers to cell phones to destroy documents and technology that was under subpoena. You have Joe Biden, who was keeping classified documents as a vice president and as a U.S. senator, not protected by the Presidential Records Act, which President Trump and his documents are protected by. This is persecution, and I think that at the end of the day, the Presidential Records Act is going to take precedence over this Espionage Act that they're trying to shoehorn into prosecution of President Trump.
Well, look, our viewers will decide whether or not they accept that the system is corrupt. I suppose the question is he going to go to jail?
I don't think so. I think there are plenty of legal defenses that President Trump has. And keep in mind that in the U.S. system of justice, you are innocent until proven guilty. I was on a panel with some Democrats yesterday, and they were talking about the fact that President Trump and the Republicans need to stop pointing the finger at what did Biden do, what did Clinton do, and focus on proving his innocence. And I pointed out that's the problem. The Democrats think Donald Trump has to prove his innocence. The reality is they have to prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And the facts of the case, the law in this case, doesn't necessarily mean that he will be convicted, much less ever go to jail.
But he will be deflected, Steve. That is, I mean, if he runs for the presidency, he'll have a lot on his plate, will he not, as well as trying to campaign?
Yeah, and the timing of this is going to be interesting. I don't think that this will get to trial before the next presidential election. We're looking at a little bit over a year or so until we get into the November elections. He may very likely get through the primary process, get through the elective process, and as Eamonn points out, he could pardon himself. Some of the other Republican candidates, DeSantis and others, have said that they see the injustice of what's going on, and they're vowing to pardon him if he is in fact convicted. So we're a long way from him having to pardon himself, but that is certainly a possibility.
Eamonn was describing the pantomime of it all. There were lots of posts about the prosecutor who has gone, above and beyond really to try and put this case together, a guy called Jack Smith, and they were face-to-face for the first time in that Miami courtroom yesterday. What was that moment like, and, what did Trump make of it all?
Well, we certainly see in his speech last night back in Westminster that he is not backing down. He was calling this guy deranged and everything else he could come up in the book with. The thing about this prosecutor is that he is under the direction of the Biden Attorney General, acting at his behest. So this is the Biden administration going after their primary opponent, a guy who is leading dramatically in the Republican primary and beating Joe Biden head-to-head in most primaries. And I don't think it's a coincidence that this is all taking place at the same exact time as we have documented evidence from a credible FBI informant who's been paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in the past, that Joe Biden himself took a $5 million bribe from one of the executives at Burisma in Ukraine, and that there are 17 audio tapes, about 15 that bear the voice of Hunter Biden and 2 that bear the voice of Joe Biden. There is no investigation by this FBI, by this Department of Justice, by this administration into Joe Biden, the big guy in the Biden crime syndicate. And I think that there is no coincidence that this is actually a distraction from that rather than trying to actually prosecute Donald Trump.
But Steve, what I want to know, and as the trial progresses, I'm sure we'll find out, what is in the boxes? I mean, you know, if we can then come away and say, oh, he shouldn't have been in possession of these deadly secrets or this chemical formula or whatever, yes. But if it is like a souvenir of his agenda visiting the UK and going to visit the Queen and whatever it is, and those would be classified documents because his itinerary would not want to be, they wouldn't want that released. And you sort of think, well, they're like souvenirs. I mean, what on earth do you think is in the boxes that would provide any value to President Trump?
Well, that's a lot of what he talked about last night, that of the dozens and dozens of boxes that were retained after he left the White House, which is his prerogative under the Presidential Records Act. Some of them were newspaper clippings and some of them were clothing. Of the 15 boxes that were remaining under lock and key at the behest of the FBI after they had come in and surveyed what he had, out of the 15 boxes that they took, only about 150 documents in all of those boxes are actually at the dispute. And some of those are disputed as whether or not they had been declassified by the president as president and that he had authority to retain them under any circumstances. So a lot of these were just memorabilia that he...
Oh dear, we just lost Steve Gill there from Colorado giving us his appraisal, but he was just wrapping up, I think, finishing that.
We have a meter here. And
we didn't put the money in.
Didn't put the money in. Somebody didn't put their credit card in, or we're out of credit. I don't know what, or the FBI have intercepted all of this.
My final question was going to be, and it's just pose it generally as a question is, there are so many allegations that this is the Attorney General, Biden's Attorney General appointed. It's the president. It's the American system, isn't it? They choose the judiciary. I believe Steve Gill can hear. If Trump does get re-elected, surely the first thing he has to do then is have a system like we have in the UK and separate the judiciary from the legislature so that it is completely independent. And you don't have this undermining of the judiciary when every time somebody who has a different political position from the person who's been appointed can defy the law, essentially.
Well, and that's why you usually will have the appointment of a special prosecutor who is independent. And yet again, in the case of Joe Biden and the documents that he was keeping, again, keep in mind, the documents that Joe Biden kept were being stored in his garage, less security than being stored in a locked bathroom at Mar-a-Lago. And these were retained as a U.S. senator and as a vice president. He had no authority to retain these documents under the Presidential Records Act, and yet no independent prosecutor has been appointed by his attorney general. No independent prosecutor has been appointed to investigate the $5 million bribe that he is alleged to have taken from the Burisma executive. So there should be an independent prosecutor to move it out of politics. The fact they haven't done that, I think, underlines that this is political.
Well, I think his main worry, the main threat against him is Melania. Because Melania must say, here's me, I'm going into the bathroom this morning, I've nowhere to put my makeup, I've nowhere to put my brushes and everything that I've got to do.
She doesn't need much.
But she's going to say, there's no space, she's going to say, Donald? Or what would her accent be? Donald, you'll get this rubbish out of here right now.
How big the mansion is, there's never enough bathroom space. And the fact that he had to occupy one with all these boxes, you're
devastating.
Right. That puts any guy in trouble in any country in the world.
Quite right. And with those wise words, Steve, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Presidential Advisor Steve Gill there. Thank you.
Thank you. At the time, 6:25.
Did you have those boxes in your bathroom?
No.
No, quite right.
No. I don't have a big enough bathroom for that many boxes.
So you're a bit Melania-like. You're a bit Melania-esque.
Am I?
Yes.
I'll take that.
That statuesque sort of model look.
Oh, thank you. It's the nicest thing you've ever said.
But you'd walk in and you'd tell Donald to get those boxes.
Oh, I tell you what, I wouldn't. I couldn't have been married to Donald for that long. Anyway, 6:26. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories. Junior doctors are going on strike again today, this time in an ongoing dispute over pay. Thousands of NHS appointments in England are to be affected. The 72-hour walkout will run from half an hour's time until 7 a.m. on Saturday.
The boss woman at ITV, Carolyn McCall, She's going to be in front of MPs today, where she'll be quizzed on ITV's approach to safeguarding and complaint handling in the wake of Philip Schofield's affair. It follows Mr. Schofield's admission that he had an unwise, but not illegal, affair with a much younger male colleague.
Italy is preparing a state funeral in Milan for the death of the former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi. He died on Monday at the age of 86 after being treated for a lung infection linked to leukemia in April.
The thing is, if you were a friend of Silvio's before he died or whatever, would you not have said to him, enough for the plastic surgery? Because he looks completely different. He looks embalmed before he died.
But, you know, the Italians, they like the coiffed look, they like the very groomed look. You know, they invented the slick suit and, you know, he was just the absolute archetypal Italian.
What are you talking about? I'm talking about his face.
I know, but it's part of the look, you know, slick and, you know... You're so cheeky. We're going to lighten the mood now. There's a lot of heavy news about, but after the break, we're talking about Jack Grealish a little bit more, and also the transfer window. It's opening, apparently. Yeah, we're talking about Kylian Mbappe. Could he be on the move? Paul Coit has all the details next.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Still to come on the programme this morning, if you stay with us, what have we got?
The rise of the digital dead. Paul McCartney's announced a final Beatles song featuring the AI-assisted voice of John Lennon. We'll be discussing the morality of it. Is it right to bring back dead artists? That's at just before 7 o'clock.
Well, there he is, Jack Grealish. He's been on a bender since they
all? Why is he getting all the grief?
Because he's got an international match to play on Friday night, which he may well have. It doesn't matter what it is. If I was his manager, I wouldn't be selecting him for that.
Oh, come on.
No, come on, you want. He's a professional sports person.
If he was Man United, you wouldn't mind.
He wouldn't be. A Man United player wouldn't behave like that. That's the difference. That's the difference.
Think,
do you think Eric Ten Hag would tolerate that?
Behaviour, but somehow Jack Grealish, with those baby cheeks, he can just do what he wants. Well done. He's achieved something.
He is doing what he wants.
So let him celebrate.
Your view, GB Views at gbnews.com, or tweet us at GBNews. The back pages on this Wednesday morning look like this. Jack Grealish again. Jack's wild. This is the Mirror. Let's see it.
Let's see some Jack. Oh, God love him. It's just so sweet.
Oh, God love him. He died of alcoholic poisoning.
No, don't say that.
City's England stars recover from their celebrations before international duty. That's nice. The Star believe it's a win-win-win.
Oh, look, there he is.
City, what is that? City urination, was that today?
Situation.
Situation. As the treble winners join the Three Lions squad in Malta. And the Mail says you can't say no to Stokes, as Moeen Ali admits that Ben Stokes is the only captain who could have brought him back to the Ashes, batting... wait a minute, it was another one. The Express cover Moeen's role of honour as the cricket star picks up an OBE at Windsor Castle today. Well, very good.
Fantastic.
That's Moeen and I both on OBEs.
Wow.
There you go. Here's Paul Coyte, who has no honour whatsoever.
No. Well, I've never had any honour of any description whatsoever.
Not formal, but informal.
Right, Jack Grealish, first of all. Right.
Yes!
I'll tell you my point is. My point is, the season's not over for him.
Right.
But it might well be over. I mean, if you were, what's his name in England? What's his
Southgate?
Name? Southgate. If you were
Look
him...
at me.
If you were him,
my football knowledge.
Would you be picking Jack Grealish?
Absolutely all day. All day and all night I would pick Jack Grealish. Firstly, I'm with you when it comes to some of it, when you just see I need to be, the turkey needs to be fed and all that, and pouring down the booze in front of it's not a great look. That's something that I feel about that. It's something that's just not quite right for me, especially with these kids But I see you raising your eyebrows, but he's a fantastic fella. I mean, the amount of work... I mean, I don't want to sound like the amount of work he does for charity, but he does a huge amount of work. He's never one of these players. Do you remember we showed the Arsenal thing, and also there was the Leeds players as well when they were walking through? He will stop at everybody and
that's
speak to them.
because he's drunk, probably.
Oh, that's not fair, right?
Well, he hasn't stopped drinking since last Saturday night.
He's stopped now. And also, the difference is, if I drunk that much, or if I'd probably had just a few, I'd probably have a hangover that would last for 3 days. He is a finely tuned athlete. Trust me, he'll get 5 hours sleep and he'll be fine. You know, he's a kid and he'll be absolutely fine.
Freddie Flintoff got legendary status.
You're right.
Bowling into Downing Street after a
correct.
3-day bender from was it the Ashes? I don't know what.
Yeah, it was. It was the Ashes.
Yeah.
It was the Ashes.
Well,
and everything was like, oh, Freddie, oh, funny, oh, Freddie. But then... I mean, poor old Jack.
We're debating it at 7:20, and we're saying, is he a bad role model for youngsters? I was out and about with kids at the weekend. My son's not really a football fan, but he was with some of his friends. They all had their shorts rolled up. And I was like, what they all do? It was Jack Grealish wears his shorts rolled up.
They didn't have a bottle of vodka on the go, though, I hope. That's the thing. So, but that's the thing. I agree with Eamonn and what you say about that. And that's something that I feel slightly uncomfortable about, especially when we have, if we start looking deep and how much, alcoholism in sport and in life in general and the amount being poured down, whether young kids are going to look at that. But as far as a role model away from that, I think he's a fantastic fella.
Well, what position does this put Gareth Southgate in for these European qualifiers? I mean, these are games no one seems to be interested in anyway.
Yeah. Malta away. Do you remember if Stanley Matthews used to live in Malta? Well, you know Stanley Matthews moved to Malta.
Did he?
Yeah. He was the oldest player to play for England when he was 42. Played in Malta up till his 60s. So I think they have a trophy named after Stanley Matthews because Stanley Matthews still the big footballing icon over in Malta.
I remember in the early 70s England getting a hard time in Malta because the pitch was... There was no grass on the pitch. Yeah. I think it was in Valletta. Yeah. And it was a hard game. I think England may have won 1-0 or so, but it isn't the walkover that you may necessarily expect.
It should be, shouldn't it? But so Malta away on Friday. This is all in the Euro qualifiers. And then Monday, North Macedonia. So it's really taking the football season out with a bit of a whimper, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's like, get these over and done with. Get Jack back out on holiday, send him back to
let him recover properly.
Let him take it easy, and then back with the new season. But I mean, a lot of the talk is transfer window, Eamonn, because the transfer window has opened today. So we're going to start seeing these deals going through.
Well, what I worry about, though, is the uncertainty over the Manchester United takeover because that will affect the transfer window with them. 1 minute, we were all led to believe that it will be the Qatari takeover.
Yep.
and now the reports on that are backtracking.
It's just taking too long. I just smell a rat. Something strange is going on here. I don't know whether it's the owners, whether the Glazers are thinking we can just buy time here and just sit back and then we'll just see what happens. Surely they would have sold by now. There's been 5 bids. They're now talking about a 6th bid coming in. So the Qataris are still in. Sir Jim Radcliffe apparently is still in. There was reports from Qatar that the deal was done. So then the Manchester United share price went up through the roof on Monday. That's now been denied now because the Qatari press that actually announced it said, oh, actually, no, it's not confirmed. So now the share price is now even down again. So we just have to see. It's a really strange situation, but it is going on just forever. So the 5th bid, we're at 5 billion. So I don't know how many billion they're going to want before the sale actually goes through.
But it was also like the Live tournament. We thought that was a done deal between that and the PGA Tour. Maybe not so.
Yeah, well, we got the US Open begins tomorrow, and that's where you get the Live golfers will then play against the players in the PGA Tour. It'll be interesting because it's the first time they would have been together since this really strange announcement last week saying that Live Golf is going to join up with the PGA and also with the DP World Tour, which is the European Tour. John Rahm, the winner of the Masters, great Spanish player, he was always very much against Live, very much against it. And he was saying yesterday in the press conferences for the US Open, just saying, I was getting texts and I had no idea what was going on and no player knew. And as I've mentioned before, the PGA, it's the Professional Golfers Association. They should be aware and have a say in everything that goes on. But I had no idea that some deal had been made. And then you've got players that have been given 100, 200 million quid to go and play there. They're now free to play in the PGA. It is a real mess.
Tell you what,
it is a real
what
mess.
a day today would be to hit a ball. And go and play golf. The weather's so lovely today.
Yeah, beautiful. It's a bit hot, though, isn't it, for the golf, do you think? Yeah, well, you play 18, 6?
Well, you play 9, could you?
Pitch and putt?
Stop for refreshment.
Yeah. Crazy golf, I'd do that. That'd be all right. Yeah.
You too.
Do you know, I can't stand crazy golf. What is the point of that?
Honestly, what do you want?
Oh, my whole...
we were going to go crazy golf with Jack Grealish today, and I don't think you're going to be up for it now.
Colin Best has just opened a crazy golf course, so he has in, I think it's Ibiza. But... all I have is summer holiday memories. All my kids ever wanted to do was crazy golf.
Yeah.
It used to drive me insane.
I love the crazy golf.
Because they used to beat me at it.
Yeah, I'd like to ring the bell at
thanks,
We'll have more from you a little bit later on.
When are we going to see you again? 8:20?
8:20.
Look, listen, I'm counting the time already.
Bless you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
OK, listen, stay with us. We're going to have the latest for you on that attack in Nottingham. We'll have the pictures of the victims, Barnaby Webber and Grace Kumar, reflected in most of the papers. And when we go through the papers with Sean McDonald and Emily Carver after this.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in their home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, everybody. Very good to have you on board. Eamonn and Isabel here with breakfast on GB News. Thanks for your company.
We are going through the papers today. Let's take a look at the front pages. They are, of course, mostly featuring that horror attack in Nottingham yesterday. Here's the Times paying tribute to what we have to say, frankly, are two beautiful 19-year-olds, Barnaby Webber and Grace Kumar, killed in that attack alongside a 50-year-old man.
The Mail also leads horror in Nottingham and says one of the students killed was a 19-year-old rising hockey star.
The Mirror says the Nottingham victims were just 5 minutes from home when they were killed in the city.
The Eye says mortgage rates could resemble those seen in the 1980s as interest rates head for 5.75%.
Right, we're going through the papers this morning in more detail with the broadcaster and the host of Blethered, Sean McDonald. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And the columnist at Conservative Home and regular presenter here, Emily Carver. Good morning to you both. We have to start then with this horror story that unfolded whilst we were on air yesterday morning. It shouldn't affect your compassion, but I think we can all see that these were people that had their whole lives ahead of them, particularly the two students, sporty, bright, good-looking, and just such a senseless attack, Emily. What are the Telegraph saying about it all?
Yeah, it's absolutely horrendous. Looking at these pictures, it's hard not to feel moved emotionally. It really is sad to see their smiling faces. They're so young. As you say, their whole lives ahead of them. They were just... The Telegraph reports the facts. They were walking home in the early hours yesterday from a party, one of the last parties of the year at university, and they were stabbed in a random attack. And then the suspect went on to attack another man and then went on to steal his van and use that to plough into 3 pedestrians as well. Absolutely horrendous. We know that, as GB News reported yesterday, West African migrant. The Telegraph says that he was legally here but was known to the police. And as so often with these kind of cases, the culprit is known by the police already, so one has to ask...
Known to the police, but not to the security services, an important distinction. I think that sort of implies that this was a violent person, possibly with mental health issues, as opposed to, for example, a jihadi.
Yes, because we knew that counter-terrorism were involved, but that's normal, apparently, in these kind of circumstances. So we don't know if there is a terror link yet. The police are keeping an open mind. But yes, he could be... have massive mental health issues. Either way, absolutely horrendous.
All just so tragic, really, Sean.
Absolutely horrendous. It was a really awful story to wake up to. In fact, when I saw it, I was kind of thinking it was just coming out of, being asleep, and I thought, I can't believe what I'm reading. As you've kind of pointed out too, that was the first word I thought when I saw these two people, like, beautiful. Reminded me of people like cousins, my age, people I know, and I think... Everybody can look at these two faces and think, I know people just like these, and the fact that their lives have been extinguished not only in such a sudden way, but in such a horrific and, as of yet, unexplained, reason. reason.
Well, we're hoping there will be an update during the course of the programme this morning, because the police only get 24 hours to question someone until they have to apply for an extension to that, or they have to release them. And we think it is around 24 hours since the suspect, the 31-year-old, was arrested. So with any luck, Nottingham Police will give us an update at some stage during the programme.
2 emerging sports stars, Barnaby Webber, cricketer, and Grace O'Malley Kumar. She played hockey for England, is that right?
Under 16s and under 18s, yeah. Private school girl from North London. And as you say, Barnaby from Taunton, Somerset, which is a very crickety place, of course. The home of Somerset County Cricket Club, and lots of international cricket players come from there as well.
Oh, God, it's just so horribly sad.
Right, let's move on. Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about...
let's talk
about surviving breast cancer.
Yes.
Emily, yes, because I think often scientific advancement, it should be praised, it should be lauded, and people should be told about it because it gives hope. And we're talking about breast cancer here. Times, page 6.
Yes, this is absolutely fantastic, really. The statistics that show 95% of women now survive breast cancer for at least 5 years. And the chance of dying from the disease has fallen by 2/3 since the 1990s. That's according to an Oxford study funded by Cancer Research UK. There are so many women who fear breast cancer and who do get it at some point in their lives.
Emily,
so this is fantastic
I'm going to tell you something. This is often said. People say, men get breast cancer too. Dear God, I knew a guy who was buried last week, died of breast cancer.
Is it common?
No, I don't think it's that common, but it is. I just draw it there.
Well, there you go. Men get it too.
Yeah.
So do check out, get your, your boobs checked out, men and women.
But look, the important thing to take away from this is figures are 2/3 better than they were in just the 1990s.
Yeah, so perhaps it will come the day where breast cancer isn't something we need to worry about.
Well,
nice.
what we do need to be worrying about, Sean, mortgage rates, front of the eye this morning, set to hit levels last seen in the 80s, and we know how that ended up for so many people, repossessions.
Yeah.
People's homes are their castle. We have a tradition of it in this country, unlike many other of our closest neighbours, where people want to own their homes, and these rising mortgages are a huge worry.
Yeah, it's seen as a sort of sign or a feeling of stability, isn't it? As you say, it's your castle to own your home, but mortgage rates, they're rapidly approaching levels equivalent to that 1980s misery, and 6% is now comparable to 13% back then. The reason for that is back then people were, I think, borrowing maybe two and a bit times their annual salary, but now, as we've seen with rapidly rising house costs and everything else, that people are now borrowing up to 4 and 5 times their salary. So that is having just such a massive impact. It is looking like it's only going to get worse. You know, people are blaming different sort of factors. You've got 32% blaming the government for soaring interest rates. You've got 17% blaming Vladimir Putin. I think there's probably a real mix of reasons for that. But it doesn't look as if it's going to get any better. It's leading, it says, city experts to believe that the mortgage market will need to be completely reset in order to sort of counteract this.
Yeah, but how do you reset the mortgage market? I mean, that's whether or not you see the lenders retracting their deals or you see a house price dip, which, again, it might be good for people trying to get onto the ladder, but a lot of people, all of their wealth is tied up in assets, and a lot of people will not want to see a housing bubble burst. It's a huge, huge debate.
I mean, it has been pointed out that in real terms, house prices are going down. Because inflation is so high. So whether we see a crash, I don't think we will, simply because of supply and demand, but who knows? People won't be able to afford these mortgages, and that's why these companies are pulling them. But I think it is frustrating to read that Andrew Bailey of the Bank of England says, we think inflation is going to come down. It's taking longer than we expected. They were the ones who said it was going to be transitory, it's only going to be temporary, blah, blah, blah. Oh, wait, actually, it's lasting rather a long time.
What do they know?
Going full circle.
Thanks very much. Get in touch with your views. Much appreciated. Emily and Sean will be back in 40 minutes' time. Let's bring you up to date with today's top stories.
Boris Johnson has urged the Privileges Committee to publish its report on whether he lied to Parliament and, in his words, let the world judge their nonsense. It comes after his legal team made last-minute representations on Monday evening.
Campaigners say frustration at a lack of change 6 years on from the Grenfell Tower fire is turning to anger. 6 years ago today, the West London Tower block became a scene of devastation, costing 72 lives. A resident who had long campaigned on the tower's safety said he was convinced the fire would become a catalyst for change, but branded the lack of criminal justice not only as unsatisfactory, but also abusive.
Nearly half of non-retired people believe they'll be working past their state pension age. A survey from People's Partnerships also found 1 in 14 don't think they'll ever be able to retire.
Now, all this week we've been talking about artificial intelligence and we've been saying, oh, there's things that are going to happen and it's all going to be awful.
Yes.
But this might be something that we might think is good?
Well, maybe. Let us know what you think, because John Lennon obviously died in the 80s, but the Beatles fans have now promised that new music later this year will be featuring him.
OK, so AI has been used to bring John Lennon's voice back from a demo tape so that he could, so there could be another Beatles record.
But we're asking this morning, is it right to create new art using an artist's likeness without their consent?
Yes.
Ellie Phillips is here in the studio. Eamonn thinks yes. What do you think?
I think it's really difficult with this one because what Sir Paul McCartney said is that actually it is John Lennon's vocals, so it's not his likeness, it is his voice. And AI has been used really specifically in this case to separate his vocals from the guitar, because back in the day when you recorded music, you recorded it live with the music, with an orchestra or a band. Nowadays you don't. You go into a booth, you record your one bit, and then that gets put together and mixed in. And so for them to get a record that was up to scratch, because this was a demo that was recorded, they wanted to separate the vocals. It is John Lennon's voice. It was his song. It was actually from a demo that in 1994 Yoko Ono gave to Sir Paul McCartney, and it was titled For Paul. Written by John just before his death, had 3 tracks on them. 2 of them, Jeff Lynne, who's an amazing producer, managed to kind of get up to scratch. This is the only one he couldn't do. And George Harrison said of his attempt, it's rubbish, I'm not doing it. But now, with this new AI technology, they've been able to get a clear cut of his voice to use to mix into this for future release.
But Ellie,
very well explained.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, very well explained. It's very clever. Well, you know, yes, the tape belongs to Paul McCartney because he was given it by Yoko Ono. Yes, the voice belongs to John Lennon, but he's dead.
Yeah.
Who actually owns those vocals? And to me, it seems as a bit of a grey area. And I don't want to poo-poo it. I think it's fairly harmless in this instance.
Yes.
A lot of people would love John Lennon. But in the future, you know, is this something we all need to be thinking about? Writing something in our will saying expressly, I don't want any of my images...
Say, I don't want any of my songs used and abused.
Your voice could quite easily be used, for example, for political campaigns that you don't believe in, or whatever it might be in the future. This is where it could go. It's very serious.
You might get a kickback, though.
Serious, it's very serious.
To turn a joyful story into something negative. No, but seriously...
I think in this one, I think the reason it's so important is because the headline on this has been AI, and AI is quite worrying because, for example, the Pet Shop Boys have said that they've got songs where they've written really amazing choruses, but they can't do the verse, and they've said, we'd probably use AI to fill in the gaps. And it's like, no, there are talented songwriters out there, there are artists. Let's use technology in a positive way, but not more than is needed.
Oh, right, because you can fill
and
demand.
take jobs away.
Yeah,
and also it's a
artists.
creative industry as well. I think AI and technology in general is taking jobs away. If you look at supermarket workers now, we can all check out ourselves, and soon they'll recognise us to say whether we're old enough to buy alcohol or not. But that's taking jobs away from those people. And when you're taking jobs away from the creative industries, it's kind of even worse, because that's something that is really subjective. It's a creative art form, and how much can AI do with that?
OK, and all noted, both of you, right? But from the joyous point of view, I think, imagine there could be more Elvis music, there could be more Sinatra music, there could be more Johnny Cash music. There's all sorts of people that I would think.
But would it be their music, though?
Yeah, and also triggering for loved ones. You know, if your dad has died and then people are using their voice and you're walking down the street and suddenly you hear...
A massive regret I have in life is not having video of my father.
Yeah.
There's seconds, like 2 seconds and whatever. And I would love if someone could recreate or put something together of movement with my father with his voice and whatever it is. So I wouldn't care if it was false or not.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. To be able to feel him, watch him, see him, know the man that I knew, I mean, it'd be incredible.
See, it's interesting you said that, because when he was talking about this, Sir Paul McCartney himself was saying there are 2 sides to AI. There's a good side, but there's also a really scary side, because people come up to him and say, oh, my God, I heard this track and it's got John's voice on. And he's like, that's not John's voice, that's AI, that's not him. And it can be odd, because if you see, there's just so many circumstances that can be taken differently, I think.
Okay.
So,
well,
it's an interesting one.
Thank you for explaining all of that.
Thank you for bringing us through the moral maze that was involved in all of that, technically and ethically. Thank you very much indeed. Ellie, thank you. And you're looking very summery. Hope you enjoyed
and
the
actually,
today.
once a student of University of Nottingham, we're talking about that next. But, you know, this has really struck with...
Massively. I lived on Ilkeston
Road
for 4 years and it was a bubble of happiness. Lenton is student-filled. People don't understand. The University of Nottingham is a campus university, but when you graduate from there, from your freshers, you go on to live in Lenton and it's just shocking that it happened there.
Truly shocking. Ellie, thank you. Well, we will have the latest on that shocking incident in Manchester, but first, here's your forecast with Alex Deakin.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Another fantastic day if you like it warm and sunny, but not so good if you're a hay fever sufferer, with grass pollen levels again very high across a good chunk of the country. The pressure is high to the north of the UK, allowing a bit of an easterly breeze to pick up. It's made for a fresher start in the east compared to recent mornings. It's been another very warm and humid night in the west and another very warm and sunny day for the vast majority. Only the very small chance of seeing an isolated heavy shower breaking out today. Most places just seeing blue skies for most of the day. But as I said, UV levels are also very high, so you need the sunscreen on, and grass pollen levels are also high or very high. Temperatures are also pretty high, not quite as high as yesterday, but still getting into the high 20s in the south and widely into the mid-20s. The eastern side a little cooler because of that breeze, which may just generate a little bit more mist on some eastern coasts. We could see some of that drifting inland overnight tonight, but again, most places just dry and clear, and perhaps a little cooler for most places. Temperatures dipping into the low teens, and further west again warmer, but not as warm as the night just gone, perhaps a little bit more comfortable. So we're just seeing those humidity levels dropping off a little bit. Again, most places looking fine. Tomorrow, plenty of sunshine around. Perhaps, again, 1 or 2 showers breaking out here and there. Very isolated, but where they do occur with the heat and humidity, we may see them turning into thunderstorms. But the vast majority, dry and sunny again tomorrow. Again, temperatures just a degree or so down, but still warm for the time of year, getting into the mid-20s pretty widely. That'll continue into Friday, but as we head towards the weekend, just an increasing chance of seeing a bit more cloud and some showers drifting in from the west, but temperatures mostly staying in the mid-20s.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point, but boom.
And action.
Sergeant, read my superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
The second victim in the Nottingham attacks is named as 19-year-old Grace Kumar.
7 o'clock is the time. It's Wednesday, the 14th of June. Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Students Grace Kumar and Barnaby Webber have been named among the 3 murdered in the attacks in Nottingham yesterday.
Here in the city centre, where 3 other people were run over in the attacks, the roads have now reopened to traffic, but the police investigation is continuing apace.
Boris Johnson has hit out at the Privileges Committee, calling its report nonsense and urging them to publish it. It comes after they received last-minute representations from Johnson's legal team, which will delay publishing of the findings.
Appoint a real special prosecutor to go after the most corrupt president in the history of the United States of America, Joe Biden.
And whilst you were sleeping, Donald Trump has hit out at his political opponents, accusing them of trying to rig the election with court cases. He was speaking in New Jersey directly after he entered a plea of not guilty for mishandling classified documents.
The ITV chief executive, Carolyn McCall, will face a grilling by MPs today, where she'll be quizzed on the broadcaster's approach to safeguarding and complaint handling in the wake of presenter Philip Schofield's affair.
And as the heatwave continues, we will have the latest forecast before you set off for your day.
Another day of blue skies for the vast majority, staying fine for much of the rest of this week. We could start to see a change with our weather into the weekend. For a full forecast, join me later.
So it is our top story this morning. 2 19-year-old students, Grace Kumar and Barnaby Webber, have been named as 2 of the victims in the attacks in Nottingham in the early hours of yesterday morning.
Also, a man in his 50s was killed, with police believing the suspect stole that man's van and used it to drive into members of the public.
A 31-year-old man's in custody. Police aren't currently looking for any further suspects. We can get an update on that investigation from our Home and Security editor, Mark White, who joins us from the scene in Nottingham this morning. Good morning to you, Mark. Lots of questions remain around exactly what the motivation might have been in this.
Yes, indeed, and counter-terrorism detectives who were assisting Nottingham police throughout the day yesterday, we're told, are now taking a step back, that Nottinghamshire police will continue to lead this investigation. There is nothing that points as yet to any terrorist motivation for the events that unfolded in several areas of the city. We're in Milton Street. This is where those 3 members of the public were run over by this van, 1 man still in a critical condition. And as for the suspect, who was later tasered and arrested by the police, well, GB News has been told that he is a 31-year-old West African migrant who has a history of violence and mental health issues. Now, whether he had a criminal record or not, we're not aware of that at this time, but clearly it raises all kinds of questions about whether there was any kind of indicators, pointers to a propensity for violence before he came to the UK, or indeed even when he was in the UK. That will all form part of the longer term investigation alongside the police inquiry, which continues apace. Yesterday we saw a number of properties not far from the scene where these 2 young students were stabbed to death that were raided, properties we understand that were linked to the 31-year-old suspect. 2 women were taken away. They'll have been taken away really as part of a process of witness interviews at that stage. What we're going through really is a process where the detectives, finding out exactly who this individual is, they then go raid and check the home address, check the address of people that might be either family members or other friends of this individual, as they piece together as much as they can, because they are, of course, trying to find out more about this suspect, but also whether anyone else may be linked to what was happening, may have had knowledge, or may well be planning something similar. No indication of that. The police are convinced that this was an isolated incident.
OK, Mark, with that, thank you very much. Do keep us posted. As I say, we're expecting an update from the police shortly, I would imagine.
Mark, talk to us about the mood there. When Isabel and I broke this yesterday morning, it was a bright day. The weather was exactly the same as it is with you today. We're coming to the end of term time and graduation at these universities. These students have done all their hard work. And there obviously was a bit of a party atmosphere on the streets and whatever. That obviously has changed in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this so many times over the years. You come to a community and many people really are quite appalled and shocked by what's happened. Lots of other people, I have to say, just getting on with their lives as they have to do. But you're right to talk about this sort of party atmosphere in the city. This is a university city, two big famous universities. These two young students had been at a nightclub with so many other young students, as is so much a part of student life. They were about to celebrate yesterday evening, but that is just an indication of where we are. This is a young and a vibrant city because of those two universities, and they will feel it particularly badly.
Mark, thank you very much indeed. We want to bring in now Philip Ingram. Philip, security is his thing. He's a former senior military intelligence officer on all of this one. And Philip, how the police are dealing with this. This guy seems to be not connected to a terrorist organisation. The brutality of his killings, whether they were influenced by terrorist organisations, that's another question to answer. But surely for the security forces now, the main thing is to reinforce that these streets in Nottingham are safe, because there are a lot of people they want to get out of there now. They're frightened to go out on the streets.
Completely. And the police reaction, whenever it first started, was robust because they didn't know what was going on. And they went in as if it was a major terrorist incident so that they can bring all of the resources to bear as quickly as possible and then tune them back once they got more information through. But the critical piece was to protect the public first and foremost as they worked out what it was that was going on, get the suspect arrested, and as Mark has described very well indeed, they're now in the process of gathering the evidence to try and find out what the motivation behind this horrendous attack was.
Well, we want to talk about the mood on the streets now, and joining us is our correspondent, Ellie Phillips. So, Philip, just stay there and we hear her take on things, because the thing is, you were a student at Nottingham University.
Yeah, I was at the University of Nottingham for 5 years, stayed on campus for 1 year, and then for the other 4 was in Lenton, which is where the 2 students were murdered. And it's hard to explain to people how, for me, it's not that it was in Nottingham as a big city, it was that it was in this student bubble. You don't go there if you weren't a student. It was full of students. It was just the life and soul of life there. So much fun and such a happy, safe place.
Yeah.
I remember walking around feeling so kind of at ease 24/7, no matter what time of day, bumping into students constantly because that's where everyone lived, making the best memories and just being so excited for future life. This has really, torn through the heart of that, and I feel really bad for obviously those who died and the families affected, but also the students living in that area now, who will no doubt feel really scared.
We don't know what they were studying at the university, but we are getting more details about the victims. One of them, Grace, was a former England hockey player, and we know that Barnaby was a cricketer. Exceptional people. And, of course, the University of Nottingham, you'll know this, incredibly hard to get into. One of the top 5, I'd say, probably universities in the country. And here we are, they just finished their exams. We understand they were end-of-term parties, making their way home after a night out, nightclubs closed closing about 3:30. This all happening around 4 in the morning. And this would have been a party. You'll have walked those streets in that exact scenario.
The exact scenario. The way that the layout of the city is that you've got the big nightclub, which is Ocean, in the centre, and that goes to Ilkeston Road, which goes to Wollerton Road, which then the university is the bottom. So that whole pathway is where students make their way home at the end of a night. So it's usually got loads of students walking down together, different times of the night. And as you say, it was party season. The term had finished. Last night was meant to be grab ball. Sadly, it was cancelled after this horrific attack.
You see, the thing is, Philip, from a security point of view, this suspect, he would have known everything that Ellie's just described to us there. And yet, I mean, I've driven a van in my times, the size that he drove. Not an easy thing to do, especially if you've never done it before. So whether that was luck that came his way, stabbing that poor van driver, a man in his mid-50s, and killing him as well. How much do you think this seems to have been luck or misfortune?
Well, complete misfortune for the poor victims that are there. But clearly, the individual, again, from what I understand, he was dressed in black. He had clearly got a knife. He'd gone prepared for this, whether that was through some form of mental health episode or whether he'd been groomed by anything that he'd seen and all the rest of it. This is what the police are trying to establish at the moment. His motivation may not have been terrorist related, but he may have been shown how to do these sorts of things, because unfortunately there are a lot of instructions for this sort of stuff online, and individuals who are vulnerable, whether it be through mental health or other reasons, are the targets of the groomers that get people to do this sort of stuff. This is what the police will concentrate on at the moment. The shocking thing is that there are 3 people dead and there are 3 people seriously injured. The good thing is that the police response managed to close down Nottingham very quickly indeed, have isolated and arrested this individual. And I think the public can be confident that the police investigation, and they're saying they're treating this as an isolated incident, means it was an isolated incident. And, there's a period of mourning that the city has to go through, but people can be secure in the thought that the police have got this sort of robust response and there's no additional threat around.
Philip, thanks for your analysis. Really appreciate it. Philip Ingram is a former senior military intelligence officer. Thank you.
Some breaking news to bring you now, this time about the economy. We've heard in the last few moments from the Office for National Statistics that the economy grew by 0.2% in April. That's after disappointing results back in March. And in the last few minutes, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has come out and said we're growing the economy, with the IMF saying that from 2025 we will grow faster than Germany, France and Italy. But he does add a cautionary note saying with high growth needs low inflation, we must stick relentlessly to our plan to halve the rate this year to protect family budgets. Let's get some analysis on all of this.
Clutching at straws there, our economics and business editor Liam Halligan, 0.2%, and we're supposed to uncork the champagne.
You've got to take your good news where you can get it, Eamonn. 0.2% growth in April. It's a lot better than a 0.2% contraction or shrinkage of the economy. The UK economy is still growing. The Eurozone economy, with Germany at its heart, is actually in recession. Their economy is getting smaller. And this is clutching at straws. GDP, the sum total of goods and services in our economy, it's now just gone back to where it was pre-COVID. The economy, of course, shrunk a great deal during those lockdown years. The economy has now fully recovered from that COVID pandemic, though, of course, our public finances haven't. The UK government's got a lot more debt on its books. And that's one reason why we're seeing increasing signs that interest rates are going to rise, Eamonn.
Rachel Reeves has also promptly come out with her reaction. She, of course, is Labour's shadow chancellor, and she's saying the fact remains families are feeling worse off, facing a soaring Tory mortgage penalty, and we're lagging behind on the global stage. Is that a fair analysis?
We're not lagging behind on the global stage. I don't think that is fair. But it is certainly true that mortgage rates are going up. Yesterday, of course, broadcasters were rightly focused on those horrific events in Nottingham that we've all been hearing about. But something interesting and alarming was going on on what we call government bond markets, where the government borrows money. We had wage data out yesterday morning showing that wage claims were up 7.2% over the last year. That's the highest for 20 years, still less than inflation, but high wage claims. That means the Bank of England's concerned about wages pushing up firms' costs and prices, pushing up wages, what we call a wage price spiral. And financial markets concluded, Isabel, there's no easy way to say this, that interest rates are going to go up a lot more than we previously thought. We've already seen 12 successive rises by the Bank of England, all the way to 4.5%. This time last week, financial markets thought interest rates would peak at 5.25%. After those high wage data yesterday, we're now looking at interest rates peaking to 5.5, maybe even 6%, which if you are coming off a fixed rate mortgage deal and remortgaging means a big increase. Good news if you're a saver, as long as the bank gives you some of that interest. But borrowing costs are going up by more than we thought they would. And in the end, that's going to threaten the growth in the economy that we've seen today, because it does make life more difficult, not just for mortgage holders, but other people with debts, and also companies. They invest less if interest rates are higher because they have to pay more to borrow money as well. So overall, this is good news. The economy is still growing, but we've got an interest rate decision from the Bank of England this time next week, and it's pretty clear that interest rates are going up again.
OK, Liam, cheers. Thank you for that analysis.
Well, we've got Leon Emirali in the studio with us. Of course, you spent time advising in the Treasury as well under the current government. What would you say they're probably saying behind closed doors this morning? I mean, obviously relief at growth after what happened in March, but it's fairly modest, 0.2%.
It's fairly modest growth. They'll take it and they'll put out the congratulatory tweets. It's their prerogative. But I think there is going to be a great deal of fear about interest rates. And, you know, we are at levels now that we saw during the Liz Truss, Kwasi Kwarteng, disastrous mini-budget. OK, the temperature seems to be a little bit cooler than it was back then in terms of political heat, but I still think that is going to be a great deal of concern, and we may even reach 6%, average market rate by the end of this year. And, you know, to go into a general election with that looming over you is not something that any politician is going to want to be able to do. So they need to move with the economy and move quickly if they want to win that majority.
And I suppose it all relates to inflation. That relates to how people are feeling. Downing Street adamant yesterday that the Prime Minister will... he's taking the credit if it does get halved, but he will still be able to achieve his ambition of halving it by the end of the year. Is that optimistic or realistic?
I think it's possible. It's certainly doable, and he's set those tasks, hasn't he? You know, stop the boats, halve inflation. He wants to be able to point to successes, show himself as a Prime Minister who gets things done. But whether or not you can say, I've halved inflation, depends what people are feeling in their pockets. Because if it still feels like things are tight, it doesn't matter what the numbers say, these great big, you know, GDP figures or inflation figures. It's what's going on in households and household budgets that will count.
Just a final thought. We are anticipating this Privileges Committee report finally today. It might be a bit delayed because Boris Johnson's legal team putting in a last-minute, I don't know what it was, request or intervention on Monday night. Expected to be fairly shocking, given his reaction on Friday when he saw a preview piece of it. He's saying, hurry up and publish it, let the world see their nonsense. What do you think is going on here?
Yeah, I think Boris is trying to save his own reputation, and you know, he's right to want to do that, but I think he's seen it, he knows what's coming, and he has jumped before he would have been pushed, I think, and you know, that is quite clear from what we're expecting to see in the Privileges Committee report today. He's taking that line, he's trying to discredit the committee in itself, trying to say that there's some sort of political witch hunt. And OK, there might be a bit of that, but I think you have to understand that these are the rules of Parliament. If it's found that he has lied or misled Parliament in that particular way that they seem to have said he has, that is a serious issue within Westminster, and I think he has to face those consequences. Otherwise, we make a mockery of the system.
Good man, Leon. Thanks very much indeed. Leon Emirali there. He's a political analyst. 7:20 is the time. Eamonn and Isabel with you here. Breakfast on GB News. The other main stories today are: junior doctors will begin strike action today in a dispute over pay. Thousands of NHS appointments affected. It's a 72-hour walkout. It began earlier this hour and it will run till 7 a.m. on Saturday. This comes as NHS bosses warn the number of people seeking emergency help will rise as temperatures remain high across the country.
The ITV boss, Dame Carolyn McCall, will face questions from MPs today over the broadcaster's approach to safeguarding as well as complaint handling. This is after the former presenter, Philip Schofield, left the channel. Mr Schofield admitted to an unwise but not illegal affair with a much younger male colleague.
Donald Trump has been released without bail following a court hearing in a classified documents case. He's facing 37 charges of mishandling the files and is accused of unlawfully keeping US national security material. He is the first current or former president to face criminal charges, all of which he denies. Coming up next, we're going to talk about if Jack has had enough. Jack Grealish. He's been on the lash from last Saturday night. He's just been downing all sorts of things, and he's got an international game to play on Friday.
Yes.
And he's not shy of posting all of this, is he?
He's gone viral, and I suppose the question we're asking, is he glamorising loutish behaviour, or is he entitled to some pretty major celebrations after a historic treble win? More on that.
It wasn't historic. When he keeps saying it's historic, it's not historic. It's yet
when
another.
When did they last win a treble win?
1999.
Man City.
Man City. Well, it doesn't count because it's been done. It's not historic.
It's historic for the club, Eamonn.
It's not historic.
When did Man City last win the treble? We'll be back when we've finished our row.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Oh, our debate has started already here in the studio. We're going to bring that to you in a few seconds. Right now, with the time at 26 minutes past 7, Isabel will now tell you what is ahead on our programme today.
8:15, Andrew Pearce will be coming in early. We've got a little sneak peek from him. He's going to be giving us his take on ITV CEO Carolyn McCall. She's prepared to be grilled by MPs today.
Just after 9 o'clock, the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, junior doctor strike today, of course, and he's also going to be talking about Labour's plan to use AI to cut NHS waiting lists.
And you've been sending in all your views this morning. We've been talking about Jack Grealish. I'm going to read those after this. So Jack Grealish, he's been part of the Man City Dream Team, of course, and he's pretty much been celebrating non-stop, hasn't he, since Saturday
Non-stop.
night?
I can smell the drink off him from here.
So we're asking, is he just, having a well-entitled celebration, or is he a bad influence? Anne's got in touch. She says Jack's behaviour isn't a good look, especially drinking vodka out of a bottle. Would you like him to be a role model for your children? I worked with young people with alcohol problems. Those in the limelight have a huge influence, and sometimes for all the wrong reasons.
Well,
That's
Isabel,
Anne.
would you like him to be a role model for your children? Thank you, that's that answered. TV personality Nicola McLean says, no, he's not a bad influence. She loves a bad boy and he's entitled to celebrate. But etiquette coach, the immaculate Liz Brewer, says that Jack's behaviour is ridiculous and he needs to set an example. And I mean, how does this make you bristle watching this?
It does, and it makes me sad that in the world today you've got somebody here, a professional sports player, who could be such a good role model to our kids, and they need role models today desperately. And I think here we've got a sort of Gaza in the making. This guy needs to think about his health. 4-day binge, pictures of him naked to the waist and having vodka poured down his mouth. That's not a good image. And it will actually, let's see him in 5 years' time.
Carol here says it's nice to see a young lad enjoying the efforts of his hard work. I want my children to see that hard work pays off. Fair enough.
I think I can't disagree with you anymore, and I find it so horrific that we're saying that Jack has to be a role model first and foremost. Did he ever say he wanted to be one? No, he didn't. He's lived his dream of being a professional football. He's won the treble, which, Eamonn, do not choke on your coffee. He's won the treble. The best thing he could do...
He was at Aston Villa until 6 weeks ago or something.
No, he wasn't. He's won the treble. The best thing he could do in his club career, OK, if he goes on to win the World Cup with England, brilliant. Let's all celebrate it. But he's had a 4-day holiday after working his socks off.
Absolutely.
He's not been able to drink for the whole season. He's at the peak of his fitness.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
The season's not over for him.
Because he's going on to England, but that's obviously already been arranged. None of the Manchester City boys are with England yet, because trust me, I've been watching it on Instagram because I'm obsessed with Declan Rice after after the West Ham one. So I've been looking, none of the Manchester City boys there. What I love about Jack Grealish is all the other Man City players are all being nonchalant about the fact that they've won the treble, OK? And you've got Jack Grealish, who he's just like a normal young lad. And you're saying a role model. Remember when he met Finlay, the young fan with cerebral palsy, and Finlay said, if you score for England, will you do the worm?
And
he remembered and did it.
He did.
That is a nice boy. He goes out, he does charity work.
People like him. He's got a great personality
lovely.
and whatever, but he's still a professional sports person.
that
And I
can
know
drink.
you're qualified to talk about that. You're married to one. So I respect everything that Nicola says from that point of view. Maybe what I'm saying is, if it was me, my body wouldn't hold up to it. Maybe
Well,
I couldn't.
absolutely not, because you're not at your physical peak of fitness, Eamonn.
You think not?
I mean, I think you look better than Jack Grealish, but I'm just saying, Jack Grealish can go out and drink. He's young, his body is fit, he's going to do all the right things to get him back. He won't even need to do much because he's already got every bit of vitamins. Yeah,
he is one of a team.
Yeah, one of a team that's just won the treble.
No,
for goodness sake.
He's one of a team.
Yeah.
And in
That's
sports, you have something called a team spirit. You
And they
work
definitely
together.
have it. They've just won.
No, you work together and you actually are a role model. Whatever you might think, and you don't want him to be a role model, he is a role model. He's lucky enough to be in that position. He has a chance to actually show kids today the way to behave. They need a guide.
He has shown the way.
He's shown them 4 days of reckless behaviour.
What has he done that's reckless? What has he done that's reckless?
Having vodka,
what has he done?
bottle of vodka poured down your throat.
What has he done that's reckless? Nothing.
The photographs of him, the sad photographs of him being escorted onto a plane. They were even going to send him a wheelchair.
His teammate helping him onto a plane.
That's not a good look.
The last time I saw this sort of look and alcohol being poured down your gullet was with Isabel on a weekend. But the thing is, you're not a professional athlete, so I sort of forgive that.
No, but do you know what?
behaviour.
Actually, I do want to pick up on something Liz said earlier, because you implied that if somebody does go out on a bender, they could end up with alcohol problems. But actually, you've got quite a lot of knowledge of people that have alcohol problems, and that's totally not true in your view.
In my view, you are not going to go out on a 4-day bender because you are celebrating winning the treble and become an alcoholic. It is completely ludicrous to say that. Also, I have a 17-year-old boy that wants to be a professional footballer. He doesn't drink. He goes to the gym every day. When I told him I was doing this, he said, you better not slag Jack Grealish off, even though we're not Man City supporters by any means. And I said, no, I love him. He said, good. My son isn't looking at that and going, oh, my God, I want to drink. He doesn't drink. I drink. He doesn't drink. Kids know what they're doing. Jack Grealish doesn't drink every day. He's had a celebration good for him.
But you can get alcoholic poisoning. You can drink too much alcohol in one go. He hired a private jet. He flew from Istanbul.
He didn't hire one.
Did he not?
No.
Who hired it?
The club, they all went.
What, they all went to Ibiza?
Yeah, they all went. It wasn't just Jack that was there.
But it's Jack who got the focus, and it's Jack.
But is that
the
his
behaviour?
fault?
That's not his fault.
Jack, we're talking about Jack's behaviour, and
That he's done nothing
and
wrong.
as I said, he has done something
No,
wrong.
he hasn't.
He has. 4 days is unnecessary. 1 day, fair enough.
God, I'm going to start tomorrow, and I won't finish till Sunday.
When he was underage, he was caught
birthday.
having a drink by his football manager and reprimanded, and he never, ever, ever did that again.
Jack Grealish isn't underage.
But Liz, may I just say, we're not talking about Prince William. We're not talking about, he is a footballer, and, we've got to respect what he's achieved. And may I just say, do you not accept the point that Nicola's making of all the wonderful things and the role models that he has become? Because a lot of youngsters look up to him because he is family-oriented.
And sad to have undone all that.
He's not undone it, and it isn't sad. It's so judgmental.
No, sad to
You're
have
so
undone all that.
judgmental.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I know, it's awful.
Undone all that purely because 4 days. Well, probably
sure
after
Jack
1 day,
Grealish
perhaps he
feels
didn't know what he was
absolutely
doing
fine
the
about
other
it.
3 days.
That's a very good point.
And he couldn't even
I missed the
remember.
point. Say it again.
And I
That
promise
he was so
you,
out of it, he didn't know what he was doing.
No, and if you start on that
Why,
track...
have you got his phone
if
number?
you
Have you
start
asked
on
him?
that track at that
Well, I'll
age,
tell you,
he will go literally the same way as Gaza.
If I was...
the
Gaza,
same
and
way-
he won't. You're so judgmental. You really should,
But if I was
honestly,
his
you should go and speak to
if I was
him.
his
right to
England
be.
football manager, I'd be on the phone and I'd be saying, that's enough, boy, or you're not playing.
If Manchester was red, would you be saying that? No, you wouldn't be.
Look, listen, this is only a second treble. I mean,
Look,
there's
he's
a kind of-
so
it happens
angry
all
about
the
it.
time.
If
It happens-
it was,
I don't even
if
know
it
why
was
we're
a-
marking it.
If it was a Manchester United player, you would not be saying the same thing, and I understand that.
If it was Eric Ten Hag, I wouldn't want to be appearing drunk for my football with Eric Ten Hag. But I know it's not...
I've seen Pep with Grealish. They celebrated doing what people can only ever dream of together as a team.
But where does he
And we
leave his
should-
England place on Friday?
He probably won't start, but they knew that, didn't they? Let's see if any of them do. He hasn't been dropped. No one's angry.
Yeah.
Nobody's angry apart from you.
No,
Everybody.
I promise you, there's a whole world of people out there
There's
saying
not.
that this is disgraceful
The
behaviour.
boring people.
He's
Go
actually
for it,
giving
Jack.
he's giving the wrong example to these youngsters, and they need somebody with his success.
They don't need.
To actually.
They don't need.
To actually.
They need parents.
To actually
They need
be a
parents.
role
They don't
model.
need Jack Grealish.
Listen,
Isabel
I've
and I-
worked with enough drunks to know they
Good for
start
you.
off absolutely.
So you-
And
did
they've
you judge
started-
them as well?
And they've
Did you
started
judge
off,
them
and
so-
they've started
so
off at
badly?
a young age and started drinking and celebrating and thinking they can get to control it. They can't. They then go
Do you
one
drink?
step further, one step further.
We look at the European Cup and the players hold it. We've got a picture of the European Cup or anybody with one there. But Isabel and I are convinced it's topped up. It's got liquid inside it. Can we see it?
It looks like cream of tomato soup.
It looks like tomato soup, and we're
That's
just looking for a
Heineken.
still. No, we just need to see the
beers
cup.
are
the cup.
available.
We just need to see. There's no still stores of the cup. No, nobody holding the cup. No. But anyway,
bottle.
if you've seen any pictures of it, and you can see inside, it's got this strange tomato soup sort of
It does.
It
look.
was probably vitamins.
Yes.
Apparently it was just the metal. Listen, I think you're never going to agree on this.
Definitely
Eamonn
not.
and I have different views on it. Let us know your views at home. But we do thank you so much for coming in, Nicola McKean and Liz Brewer as well. Thank you.
Well, you can think of all the players you'd never seen like that. Did you celebrate after West Ham last week?
Well, I was drinking while watching it because I was so stressed out.
What a winning goal.
Oh, my
It's a
God.
brilliant winning goal, wasn't
Bowen's on fire, and I won't say the rest because I
Yeah.
won't ever be invited back.
No, but you'll always be invited back. You have a fight with Liz like that, we'll book you all the time. You'd never see Gary Lineker doing that. That's the thing. And after the break, we're going to discuss why Gary Lineker will keep his freedom to tweet his political views. Do you agree on that? That's something else that'll annoy you all this morning. Sean McDonald, Emily Carver with the papers. Next.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back at 7:41. Let's take a look at your newspaper front pages this morning.
Here's the Times paying tribute to these just two beautiful 19-year-olds who have just gone too soon. Barnaby Webber, Grace Kumar. They were killed in that attack in Nottingham yesterday, knifed horribly to death.
The Mail also leading on that horror in Nottingham. They say one of the students killed was a 19-year-old rising hockey star. That was Grealish. She was played for under 16 and under 18 England's women's hockey teams.
The Mirror reporting that the victims were just 5 minutes from home when they were killed, murdered, 5 minutes from home.
Yeah, student accommodation. And the Eye says mortgage rates could resemble ones seen in the 80s as interest rates are heading for 5.75%.
Well, I think you'd be lucky if you were in the 80s and you were paying 5.75. I think it went up to 20% or something. Can you imagine?
Yes, but then Sean was pointing out how much people were borrowing against their salaries, and it's up to 5-6 times what you're earning these days. It's much more of a shock to the household outgoings.
I remember I was able to buy my apartment, and it seemed all like a fortune. It was £22,500 in Belfast, but I was earning £12,000. So I mean, I was earning half of what this would cost. So I suppose that's what made it affordable. Then how you could do it.
Bargain.
Hard to imagine that ever being the case.
Stuff of dreams.
Yeah.
Emily, should we start in the States? You've got the front of the Times there.
Stuff of nightmares here.
Whilst we were asleep, Donald Trump not only entered his not guilty pleas, he flew straight from there to a fundraiser, presumably because he is intent on campaigning, even if he does go to jail.
Yes, we saw how well he did out of the New York case. He managed to get millions and millions of dollars of support in donations from his fans and supporters, and he's doing the same with this case in Florida. He flew straight to New Jersey, I believe, and rallied the troops and gave a barnstorming speech in the way he does, saying the country's corrupt, the government's corrupt. This is
Emily,
a sad, sad day in the history of America.
People interpret these stories depending whether they like the person involved or whether they are a supporter of their politics. Is that influencing you and how you would reflect this? Are you a Trump fan?
I'm not a Trump fan, although I do agree that there probably is an element of political persecution to this. And I do think the establishment, or at least the Democrats, have been out to get him for as long as he's been around. In the political world, anyway. So I think both can be true. I mean, it's very different, obviously, and nowhere near nowhere near as criminal, obviously, in the case in the UK with Boris Johnson. You can believe that there is an element of political persecution, an element of witch hunt, and at the same time believe that they've done something wrong, probably, likely. So I think in this case, it's the same here. But it's very interesting. There are so many potential legal actions against him. 37 charges for mishandling these documents relating to national security. Trump says, oh, this is normal. Loads of presidents have kept hold of these documents. The difference here, apparently, is that he did not allow officials to recover those documents, which is a worse crime.
OK, well, let's take all that on board. Very good. People have a view on that one. I'm a bit sort of the view, it's like VAR. You either did it or you didn't do it. Whereas you'd be a nightmare on the football pitch. You'd say, yes, I was technically offside, but I didn't mean to be offside. And you know...
It's a witch hunt for saying that it was
witch hunt, you would call that.
Sean, let's talk about this tragic and shocking story. A mother of 3, heavily pregnant, misusing abortion pills designed for very early pregnancy, but there's been a backlash about her sentencing and being sent to prison. This has been covered inside
But also,
the Mail today.
just let's get it clear here, because people talk in terms of weeks and they don't really envisage what it is. But correct me if I'm wrong, this baby was 8 months.
Yeah, she was in her 3rd trimester, I think 33 weeks, something like that. So not far off being full term. You're full term at 37, so 3 weeks or so from being full term. That baby would survive very much outside of the womb, which is why it's illegal. But that being said, is it the right thing to send a mother of 3 to prison, you know, and what is the response and the backlash in all of this?
Yeah, I would say no, it's probably not the right thing to send her to prison. I'm not going to defend, you know, the termination of an 8-month developed baby. I think we're kind of in agreement that it's indefensible. There may be sort of mitigating circumstances, whether it's the woman's life circumstances, her state of mind, the fact that it was during COVID. All of these things have to be taken into account when you're considering something which is so complex and so sensitive. But I think to send the woman to prison is basically going to be detrimental to so many other lives. You know, she has 3 kids that are dependent on her. There are a whole other sort of range of factors to take into consideration. I think what this does is it highlights the need for sort of judicial reform or sort of prison reform. Across the board, you know, we see people being jailed for things in which I don't think it benefits society. And ultimately, when people go to jail, it should be for the betterment of society, for their rehabilitation.
So, how would you rehabilitate that woman? How would you deal with her? I mean, we've just said that child would easily survive outside the womb at 8 months development. What do you do? The Prime Minister said we're not going to reform abortion law. Yeah. So where does this leave us? And you were saying there's going to be protests and things. The whole thing is going. So what are you protesting about? That's the thing. It's either murder or it's...
Well, there are some people who believe that a woman should be able to abort a baby right up until its due date, which I personally think is sick and has no place in a country like ours. It's that balance, isn't it, between the life of the mother and the unborn baby, and there is a reason why we have a limit on when you can have an abortion. 24 weeks, some people argue that's too late, some people argue it's too early, but I think it's probably about right. And this was a cruel and disgusting thing to do, I'm sorry to say. This woman, she may have been out of her mind, she may have been emotionally unstable. The judgment says she didn't have any severe mental health issues, so there's no excuse for this. And if you do believe this is murder, then she must have a sentence of some description, even if it's not for the benefit of her children that are currently living. It's pretty bad.
It definitely requires detailed discussion, because the act of which she was charged or found guilty was determined in 1861. Now, I'm not saying that then means it's completely archaic and it's completely without any merit, but given that it was 1861, I think it's maybe time that we look at it. And as Eamonn's asking the question, how do we deal with it? To be honest, I don't know, but I suppose that's why we set up task forces or committees to start to sort of modernise these types of things.
Yeah, I suppose you asked the question, is she maybe being made an example of? The Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynaecologists and also the Royal College of Midwives sent a mitigating letter to the judge urging them not to send her to prison because they were worried about the impact it would have on other women who needed support and perhaps didn't want to carry on with their pregnancy. But, you know, we now have pills by post. It is so much easier for women to have abortions, and, you know, in many ways that's a wonderful thing for women who don't want to bring a child into the world. But also, if it can be misused, perhaps it's good to make an example of that.
Sometimes we can sit and debate and whatever. We're not connected to it. We don't know the circumstances and whatever. But at the end of the day, for that woman to go through this abortion, but to see a fully formed, basically, baby.
Yeah, I did a documentary when these pills were introduced. It was as a result of COVID that the pills could be brought by post, and I interviewed lots of women who had taken the abortion pills within the legal limit, and they all said, whether they regretted it or not, that it was incredibly painful. And that's when a baby can, is tiny, tiny, tiny. Goodness knows.
Well, that's
what
why.
she went
That's
through.
how she got found out, because obviously she needed care, medical attention, and she continued to lie to the medical professionals and also the police for a long time. And if she hadn't, the judge said that if she'd pled guilty from the start, he may have been able to suspend her sentence. But I do think there is a question over these self-administered pills at home. I'm not sure if that's right, because people could use them in a coercive fashion too.
Yeah. Deep, heavy stuff there, guys. Yeah. Let's move ahead and just briefly talk about a couple of stories. And the first one, Sean, is, am I reading this right, that it is too hot for solar panels to work? I mean, now I'm completely confused.
Yeah, it's
how do they work in Spain? How do they work in Saudi Arabia?
Well, this is what I think as well. Maybe we've just got some shoddy...
They don't bother with solar panels in Saudi Arabia.
Panels.
They've got endless oil. What do they need?
Yeah, some guy in a
panels for?
Some guy in a Glasgow black market or back market is selling these dodgy solar panels. But yeah, once it goes past 25 degrees Celsius, I think they don't work as effectively. And it's seeing coal power stations being fired up for the first time in quite a while, because it is too hot for them to work. I think also there's less wind energy because, it's...
Yes, because it's nice weather.
It's a heat wave that we're going through.
The perfect storm, or not, as the case may be. Emily, Miriam Margolyes, she's an old gargoyle, it has to be said. But however, this is a very funny picture. This is a very funny picture.
Yes, she's 80...
Let's have a look at this picture.
Oh, yes, let's have a look. Is it up on the screen?
It's coming. You keep talking.
She's on the cover of Vogue magazine, and one of the pictures is her topless with
She's got her buns
iced buns in front of her. Breasts, as you can see. Now, she's quite a controversial figure, is Miriam Margolyes. She's been on various media platforms saying god-awful things. She's a little bit ghastly in my view. She did say that she would like to see Boris Johnson dead, which caused quite a lot of controversy.
Yeah.
She also said, what did she say? Oh, yeah, she also swore at Jeremy Hunt.
She hates me. What have you done
to her? She hates Eamonn
I don't know what I
Holmes.
did with her. She hates me anyway. But
She hates a lot of people, but some people seem to find her charming.
But it's very hard to get onto the front of Vogue.
I know, it's ridiculous. The Vogue does make
It is a good picture. I mean,
I've kind of seen it before with the vagina monologues. They were all posing in front of buns.
And what's that other one with what's that one they all go on tour with? They all calendar girls.
Oh, that's what I meant.
Is that
Calendar
what you
girls.
meant?
Yeah, they'll get the buns
So they weren't
out.
showing their vaginas.
No, it wasn't vagina monologues. It was calendar girls. Easily done.
Chaos here. But that's a good idea. That could work out really well.
No.
You see, as I say about you, if we replaced Miriam Margolyes with Isabel Webster,
it would sell more
that
copies.
would fly off the shelves.
I don't know if it would. It certainly would. And she's talking, she's talking about how she doesn't like her body, but she likes her face. She's talking about her sexuality, about being a lesbian, how she wouldn't want to be straight and all this. Too much information, Margolyes, and put it away.
OK. Very good, very good. Guys, appreciate it. Come back again, will you, at just after 8:30, and we'll do more stories in the papers. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed.
Right, stay with us. We're going to have the latest for you on the Nottingham attacks. The second victim's been named, and we'll be reflecting all the latest in that police investigation.
We want to break off and give you the weather forecast, and hopefully it'll be nice for you.
Good morning. I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Another fantastic day if you like it warm and sunny, but not so good if you're a hay fever sufferer, with grass pollen levels again very high across a good chunk of the country. The pressure is high to the north of the UK, allowing a bit of an easterly breeze to pick up. It's made for a fresher start in the east compared to recent mornings. It's been another very warm and humid night in the west, and another very warm and sunny day for the vast majority. Only the very small chance of seeing an isolated heavy shower breaking out today. Most places just seeing blue skies for most of the day. But as I said, UV levels are also very high, so you need the sunscreen on, and grass pollen levels are also high or very high. Temperatures are also pretty high, not quite as high as yesterday, but still getting into the high 20s in the south and widely into the mid-20s. The eastern side a little cooler because of that breeze, which may just generate a little bit more mist on some eastern coasts. We could see some of that drifting inland overnight tonight, but again, most places just dry and clear. And perhaps a little cooler for most places, temperatures dipping into the low teens, and further west again, warmer, but not as warm as the night just gone, perhaps a little bit more comfortable. So we're just seeing those humidity levels dropping off a little bit. Again, most places looking fine. Tomorrow, plenty of sunshine around. Perhaps, again, 1 or 2 showers breaking out here and there. Very isolated, but where they do occur with the heat and humidity, we may see them turning into thunderstorms. But the vast majority, dry and sunny again tomorrow. Again, temperatures just a degree or so down, but still warm for the time of year, getting into the mid-20s pretty widely. That'll continue into Friday, but as we head towards the weekend, just an increasing chance of seeing a bit more cloud and some showers drifting in from the west, but temperatures mostly staying in the mid-20s.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, I'm taking the show on the road. We'll be live in Lee with Liz Truss this Thursday, where the former Prime Minister will escape the Westminster bubble to be quizzed live by you, our amazing GB News viewers.
We're going to listen to what people are saying about how we grow Great Britain. Join us at 9 o'clock on Thursday the 15th of June, me and Dan Wootton. We're on GB News. Look forward to seeing you then.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
The second victim in the Nottingham attacks is named as 19-year-old Grace Kumar.
The time is 8 o'clock. It is Wednesday, the 14th of June. Breakfast in GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Students Grace Kumar and Barnaby Webber have been named among the 3 murdered in the attacks in Nottingham yesterday.
And I'll be speaking to one eyewitness who heard the sound of that van impacting 3 pedestrians here on Milton Street in Nottingham and saw the most badly injured man on the ground.
Boris Johnson has hit out at the Privileges Committee, calling their report nonsense and urging them to publish it now. It comes after they received last-minute representation from Mr Johnson's legal team, which will, though, likely delay publishing of the findings.
The UK economy grew by 0.2% in April, bouncing back after a fall in March. It's due to stronger consumer spending in shopping and hospitality. The Chancellor says the government must stick to its plan to protect family budgets.
The boss of ITV, Carolyn McCall, will face a grilling by MPs where she will be quizzed on ITV's approach to safeguarding and complaint handling in the wake of Philip Schofield's affair. In sport, the 3 Lions prepare for the Euro qualifiers.
So those 2 games to go, and also the transfer window opens today as well.
Very good. Why are you standing in the dark for?
I like it over here.
What?
What happened there?
Very, very dark.
Well, it might be dark here.
You just come out of the cupboard then, have you?
Lots of sunshine outside. This heat wave continuing. We'll have the latest forecast.
Stand by a window, that'll help.
Off with the day.
Another day of blue skies for the vast majority, staying fine for much of the rest of this week. We could start to see a change with our weather into the weekend. For a full forecast, join me later.
Our top story today is 2 19-year-old students there, Grace O'Malley Kumar and Barnaby Webber, have been named as 2 of the victims in the attacks in Nottingham in the early hours of yesterday morning. A man in his 50s who hasn't been named yet was also murdered. Police believe the suspect stole that man's van and used it to drive into members of the public.
Well, a 31-year-old man's in custody. Police aren't currently looking for any further suspects. And in the last few moments, the family of Barnaby Webber have released a statement describing what they've called complete devastation. They say it is not enough to describe our pain and loss at the senseless murder of our son. Barnaby Philip John Webber was a beautiful, brilliant, bright young man with everything in life to look forward to. They say he was a talented and passionate cricketer who was over the moon to have made selection to his university cricket team. At 19, he was at the start of his journey into adulthood and was developing into a wonderful man. As parents, we are enormously proud of everything he achieved and all the plans he made. His brother is bereft beyond belief, and at this time we ask for privacy as a family to be allowed to grieve.
So sad, and both these kids at 19, Barnaby and Grace, top sports people, big promising futures ahead of them.
Well, in the last few moments as well, England Hockey have released a tribute to Grace. They say she was a popular member of the England under-16 and under-18 squads. They say their thoughts are with her family, friends, teammates and the whole hockey community. So a real sense of the sort of people that Grace and Barnaby were. And we know that they just finished their exams, making their way home to their residential student accommodation at the end of what had been a fabulous year for both of them, and just a senseless horror.
Yeah.
But let's get an update now from our Home and Security editor, Mark White. He joins us from Nottingham this morning, and that human side really, I suppose, sharpening the focus for all of us on what was a devastating attack yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it's heartbreaking because these are two young people who literally, of course, had their whole lives ahead of them, going for a university education to, who knows, achieve what in their lives ahead. So just an absolute tragedy. Where we are is Milton Street, right in the centre of Nottingham, the area where those three other victims were knocked down by this stolen van. Milton Street itself has reopened, but we can speak now actually to an eyewitness who was here in the early hours of yesterday morning when this unfolded, Anthony Ross Murphy. Sorry, Ross, thank you for talking to us live on GB News. In terms of what you heard and saw, you were heading to the gym, I gather, at that time. What did you hear?
I came off the 36 bus about 50 yards that way. As I did, I heard a loud bang. I thought nothing of it really. There's plenty of people about this time in the morning. I walked towards McDonald's for a quick coffee, as I usually do, before I go to the gym. And I saw somebody lying half off the road and pavement opposite McDonald's. And still thought nothing of it because there's a lot of people like beggars, etc. in this area in the morning. I thought somebody had just collapsed. Anyway, I went in McDonald's and nobody in there thought much about it. And then about 5 minutes later, I think it's Leanne, one of the cleaners, said there's been a hit and run. And then another 5 minutes, it was 10 minutes before the police got here, and then all of a sudden they got cordons up. There was a lady policewoman with a machine gun. Then, of course, we caught on that there was more to it. And,
really dramatic events, and of course you didn't know about the stabbings further up the road.
I didn't know what had happened at 4 o'clock, no, I hadn't, no.
And was it obvious to you once the police arrived that this man who was lying on the ground was in a very serious condition?
Well, yes, because they attended to him on the ground like for probably nearly half an hour, the paramedics, whoever it was, and there was all sorts of different people coming. There was a fire engine, all sorts of people, dozens of police cars, well, at least 10 police cars. And obviously he wasn't good, yes. I didn't go across. I think that's a bad thing to do, you know.
And so, obviously, in the more than 24 hours now since that news, you've been absorbing, as so many of Nottingham's residents have. I mean, this is such a young and vibrant city. It's just, I mean, it's devastating, I guess.
There's a lot of trouble in this area, you know. I did write a letter to the Times about this area, and well, I commented because I subscribed to them about this area in particular. I mean, I know the police are understaffed, you know, I know that, and it's hard to cope here, but there's a murder every 2 or 3 weeks in this area, you know, so...
But obviously nothing on this...
I wouldn't say it shocked me, no, because, as I said, I did 20-odd years taxi drive, get used to incidents. I did hear yesterday Nottingham's 51% above the normal crime rate in this country, so nothing much shocks me around here, no.
OK, Ross, thank you very much indeed for talking to us live on GB News. Really appreciate that. And, you know, worrying really that you hear from a veteran of the city who's been here all his life, really, who says he's not shocked by the events because, sadly, Nottingham, like so many other inner cities, does suffer from a violent crime problem, but nothing really, of course, on the scale of this single incident attack in terms of what unfolded here in the early hours of yesterday morning.
OK, Mark White, with that, thank you very much.
There's so much reaction to, you know, the perpetrator those murders and what will happen to him, what should happen to him. From you all. So thank you very much indeed for that. A lot of anger. And I think, I don't know about you, Isabel, but I just feel sadness. I just look at just two young, vibrant lives, people who could contribute to the country.
Were already, you know, representing their country.
Yeah.
And bright futures, and that family tribute, of course, making it very real, very, very human, very relatable for everybody.
Do you know, when you look at young people and you think, well, what will they go on to be in lives? And you look at Barnaby and Grace there, and the world was their oyster in every way. And there's happiness written all over their faces. And we can imagine yesterday, you know, when the sun was coming up yesterday, they're walking home to their student flat. And, you know, all must have seemed so well in the world until that other 31-year-old, whatever his gripe, whatever his grievance was, appears. And apparently the stabbings were quite brutal.
Yes, well, eyewitnesses in the papers describing another student was pulling up in an Uber and saw a body on the floor. They thought, first of all, it was a shop mannequin and students had been messing around, and then pulled over in the car, realised that poor Barnaby had been stabbed multiple times and described stab wounds from the neck to the feet. And we understand that Grace managed to make her way to the doorway of a nearby house, screaming for help, and then tragically died on the doorstep there. A terrible way to go, and of course really, really traumatic for the family. And we're yet to hear the details, the name, the family statements from that 50-year-old or so man who was driving the van, of course, probably going about his business off to work that morning, also with the family. Just so senseless. But we will bring you any updates on that story just as soon as we get them.
The time is 11 minutes now past 8 o'clock. Politics, and Boris Johnson compared the Privileges Committee to a kangaroo court in a furious statement after calling its report nonsense and urging it to publish.
It comes after the committee confirmed it had received last-minute representations from Johnson's legal team, which will likely delay publishing of the findings.
Well, right across this is our political reporter, Catherine Forster, who joins us in the studio. Catherine, good morning to you. So, why haven't they published yet? And Mr. Johnson, enticing them and saying, come on, publish, publish. But he, in fact, may have be contributing to a further delay.
Yeah, he certainly has, because he's saying, publish this so we can see what nonsense this is. But there's two main reasons why we haven't seen it. First of all, some difficulties with printers in Westminster. That may sound crazy, but Westminster is a place where a lot of things don't really work as they should. But also that Boris Johnson made representations at 3 minutes to midnight on Monday night. After he was given the draft report late last week, he had up to 2 weeks to reply. So he has replied. So now the Privileges Committee will have to look and respond to that. So we're now expecting it to be finally published tomorrow, maybe even later.
Gosh, well, I mean, there's not much more to say beyond that, really. Is there delayed another day? We know that he's calling it nonsense. Let the world judge. I'm sure they will indeed do that. And meanwhile, you know, the party kind of divided over who they support on this. Although, has to be said, no more resignations have emerged. And there was suspicions that there could be some sort of backlash, but there haven't been any.
But it's all about the emotive language used. And Mr. Johnson, for instance, is using the term kangaroo court. How well does that stand up?
Well, certainly there are plenty of Boris Johnson supporters who think that the Privilege Committee were anything but unbiased. They point to Harriet Harman, who was the chair, who tweeted several times before the Privileges Committee was up and running that she appeared to think that he was guilty. There is a Conservative majority, but not everybody on there are fans of Boris Johnson. Of course, the Privileges Committee are saying this is absolute rubbish, and there is some talk of Boris Johnson supporters being found in contempt of Parliament for basically slating this and saying that it's not impartial. So we shall see. But the language, certainly, witch hunt kangaroo court, is very inflammatory, mirrored, I have to say, by another blonde former leader across the pond who's facing rather more serious charges.
Well, I have to just reflect some of the views of our viewers and listeners this morning. I support both Boris and Trump. Believe they are both subject to witch hunts. Show me all these politicians who are holier than thou and have never lied. Most have. And I have to say that kind of sums up the view, really. Name a politician who doesn't deceive the people and or doesn't lie, says Patterson. But should we accept that would be my question.
See, I'm stunned that people believe that. It's fine, my wife saying to me, who ate the chocolate in the fridge? And I'd say, well, it wasn't me, when it was. But, you know, I'm not an elected representative. I'm not there to speak on behalf of people. I'm not there to plead various causes. And is there a differential between a white lie, a fib, and a what is it in religion? It's a venial sin or a cardinal sin.
Well, let us know. I mean, a lot of people obviously prepared to allow a few lies through because of his electoral success and a lot of the things he did in Ukraine and on the vaccine. Denise, be honest. We all know Harriet Harman and all the Conservatives on that panel despised Boris. So anyway, keep those thoughts coming in. We'll try to reflect them and indeed get the neutral perspectives on it all as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. The head of ITV, Carolyn McCall, is set for a grilling by MPs this morning in the, well, it's in Portcullis House, I think, yeah. She's expected to answer questions about safeguarding and complaint handling following the explosive and detrimental Philip Schofield scandal.
Well, let's speak to our national reporter, Theo Jacumba. He's outside the Television Centre in West London. There'll be lots of questions asked then of Dame Carolyn McCall today.
Yes, indeed. Lots of questions. We also saw what happened several weeks ago when Philip Schofield resigned from his role at ITV. All sorts of bubbled over the last few days. And then, of course, we saw that letter which he put through to the Daily Mail and his following interview he'd done following his resignation. But today, Dame Carolyn McCall, alongside her colleague Kevin Liger, who works as Managing Director for Entertainment and Media, and Kyla Mullins, who's a General Counsel and, of course, works alongside those in management as the company secretary. But today there will be questions about how they handle safeguarding and, of course, complaints when people have them. In the last few days, though, we've heard from a former X Factor contestant, Rebecca Ferguson. She hit out at ITV bosses on Twitter saying she made some complaints and went to those at the top, and they refused to launch a probe into some of the complaints that she had, particularly when it comes to the care that people have when they enter entertainment shows, and of course the care that they receive after appearing on shows like X Factor and more. But she was told simply that the procedures are there already and that safeguarding is in place. Now, she said that things have to change, and they haven't since she appeared on the show in 2010. But today, though, it'll be interesting to hear what questions will be asked to those ITV bosses, particularly Dame Carolyn McCall. She doesn't have a broadcasting background necessarily. She's from a business background, but it'll be interesting to hear some of the answers that she gives following Philip Schofield's revelation and, of course, his resignation at ITV. This kicks off mid-morning today.
Thanks, Theo. Thank you very much indeed. Andrew Pearce joins us in the studio for his take, his commentary on all of this. So I suppose some of the areas she has to reassure people is what is she like as regards protecting those who are vulnerable, and the disciplinary procedures that they use, all the usual nonsense and rubbish that they talk about, but they have to investigate. When they investigated and they asked Schofield, did you have an affair with this guy, which is what they didn't ask. I know exactly what they asked. And they then asked the young lad involved in all of this. They need a transcript of what actually took place that day, because that was not a thorough investigation.
No, and look, she's the chief executive. She's a very hands-on chief executive. Philip Schofield is one of their most marketable personalities, very important for the advertisers. She had a duty to get to the bottom of it, because it was widely rumoured at ITV that this affair was going on. I'd heard the rumours. I knew who the young man was. He was a runner. We know that. He started work then when he was 18. Philip Schofield's admitted the affair was inappropriate but not illegal. and ITV botched it, the inquiry, because it wasn't really an inquiry.
No.
And he lied. He also lied to my newspaper, the Daily Mail, and in the end, that's how this story came out, because he made a statement to us saying he had lied.
You see, he is totally discredited. He's admitted he's lied to his colleagues, to the Daily Mail,
presumably to his family too, Eamonn.
Yes, exactly, to his agents, to everyone. And yet, people are deaf to this. People sit and go, poor Philip, what's he going through? He's been bullied, he's been this, he's been that. The man has lied. He's admitted he's lied. Where do we go from here? Carla McCall, what did you do about it? Because she's woke sensitive. She just jumps off. You know, she was, as you say, she's a very hands-on chief executive, but her hands are in all the wrong places, it appears.
Yeah, and Philip Schofield's whole image was the family man, happily married with kids, while he was having this affair. And how many people at ITV knew that this was a con? I mean, the viewers were being taken for mugs, in a sense. What did she know? I wrote about this in the Daily Mail. What did she know? What questions did she ask? And if she didn't ask appropriate questions, why didn't she? Because she's the chief executive and she has a pastoral duty of care.
And Andrew, just to make it clear, nobody's complaining about him having an affair. No. Nobody cares about him being gay. No. And I was very supportive of him when I thought he was gay. But then when I found out the truth of what was happening, you're right, there were rumours, but nobody could pin anything without this ITV investigation. And then what happened to that young lad? Why was he transferred? You know, it was said he requested, that's a lie, that's a lie. He did not request a move. And was he paid off? And if so, do the ITV shareholders know about that?
Well, that's the other point, because he was moved to another show, and then he moved from that show. I understand he moved abroad. The Daily Mail made quite clear in some of its reports that money was involved. Was it redundancy money, or was he paid to go abroad, to get him out of the way, pay for the problem, sweep it under the side? There are shareholders who've got an interest in this, and it's also, ITV is a major employer. It's got a public service broadcasting remit too. So these are important questions. Look, I'm gay. When he came out in The Sun in that very heavily confected interview on the front page of The Sun, and we know that the editor of The Sun, or certainly a senior Sun reporter, was on the studio when he was making his moving statement about coming out. I wrote a piece and I was saying, well done, mate, I came out 40 years ago. It's a lot easier to be out than in, because it's better to tell the truth for everybody. But as I wrote that piece, I knew the rumours that Philip Schofield had been in what I would have considered an inappropriate affair for a man probably 30 or 40 years older than one of the most junior members of staff at ITV.
But as we know, Philip has gone, and in many ways, you know, fait accompli.
Yeah.
But what I suppose the question marks remain over the management of This Morning, what they knew, the Martin Frizzels as well at ITV, and also it spreads beyond the safeguarding of other programmes at ITV. We've had in the last few days Rebecca Ferguson from ITV X Factor coming out saying, you know, complaints that I made weren't followed up, welfare wasn't looked into, and of course it's an incredibly sensitive area in this day and age.
How many people have died on Carla McCall and Kevin Ligo's watch? You know,
and look, Ranj Singh, who was the resident doctor, he said he'd complained about a culture of bullying. He called it a toxic culture, and he said his reward for the complaint was he was effectively booted out of ITV.
Well, let's take a little in-depth look at Carolyn McCall, and we'll come back to you in a sec, Andrew. We can sort of look back on what led us to where we are today. McCall held a number of top jobs, ranging from the Guardian Media Group to EasyJet in 2018, when she became the CEO of ITV.
Yeah, that would have qualified her for the job, wouldn't it? In 2019, Jeremy Kyle was axed after 14 years on air, following the concerns of the treatment of guests after the suicide of Mr. Steve Diamond.
The following year, the host of the popular show Love Island, Caroline Flack, ended her life, which led McCall to reaffirm her network's commitment to focusing on duty of care.
2021, Piers Morgan walked off the set on Good Morning Britain and basically walked out of ITV.
And then last year, both Holly and Phil were embroiled in Queuegate, skipping hours of queuing to see our late Queen lying in state.
2 months later, David Walliams left one of the broadcaster's flagship shows, Britain's Got Talent, after inappropriate comments about contestants came to light. Fast forward to this year.
And Schofield resigned from this morning following what he called an unwise but not illegal affair with a much younger male colleague. And so McCall will have to answer a lot of questions during this morning's sessions, and we will cover it live here on GB News. Do you think she can survive it, Andrew?
It's interesting because she was summoned by this committee. The ITV were before the committee a couple of weeks ago, but that was a routine thing talking about various media legislation. She was summoned by this committee. She did not want to go. You're mad if you try and defy a request from a select committee, because it's not a request, it's an order. I suspect what will happen is the committee of MPs, well, as usual, there'll be an open goal and they'll miss it. They'll hit the corner flag.
Yeah.
That's the trouble.
But I'll tell you what is also trouble. Who can actually speak about this and about ITV when they're employed in the industry? My friend, no disrespect to you at all, because we rate you so highly, but you were the 27th person we approached to talk on this, and everyone else was afraid to. And I can totally get that. I totally understand that. Indeed, you do appearance work for ITV, and I said to people, please make sure Andrew's OK with this, because these things have a way of equaling themselves out.
I read about it in the Mail, wrote a whole page about Caroline McCall. It's a very important story. He's a household name. I think ITV have handled this incredibly badly, and I think the committee is right to talk to her because she's the boss and the buck stops at the top.
Well, especially because she gets so involved.
Yeah.
She gets so involved.
And
the stories I could tell.
Yeah. And she's paid an awful lot of money.
£3 million a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she got a bonus.
Yeah.
And have you seen the share price of ITV lately?
It's doing well again. It had a little dip, didn't it, over the whole...
Because there was a lot of speculation that Holly wouldn't survive, but she's back. And I don't know Philip Schofield very well. I knew him a bit. I liked him, but I thought this was an accident waiting to happen for a very long time.
No, if you knew him, you wouldn't like him. False.
Right. OK. Well, you know him better than anyone.
OK, mate. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. So, midday, and we've got the coverage here on GB News.
I'll be back at 9:30. Oh, yes, and Andrew will be back at 9:30, of course, with his programme To The Point with Bev Turner. But for now, let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
The UK economy grew very slightly in April, which was helped by strong figures from hospitality. The Office for National Statistics says the economy grew by 0.2% in April after falling 0.3% the previous month. Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, has welcomed the figures but warns the UK needs to tackle inflation and protect family budgets.
Junior doctors have begun strike action today in a dispute over pay, with thousands of NHS appointments in England being affected. The 72-hour walkout started at 7 o'clock this morning and will run until 7 a.m. on Saturday. And we'll be speaking to the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, just after 9 o'clock about this and other health matters.
Italy is preparing a state funeral in Milan for the death of former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi. He died on Monday. He was 86 years of age after he was treated for a lung infection linked to leukemia. Good time to introduce another little bit of sport as we come to the end of the football season. Paul Coyte in the studio after this.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
8:30 is the time. Nice to see you again.
Still to come on today's programme, we're talking about the junior strikes, 9:15. The Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, will be joining us. He's also talking about how cutting-edge technology in AI could really help with NHS waiting lists.
You see, I agree. I think, we do worry about all these things, but, here's an AI story as well. Paul McCartney has announced that a Beatles song featuring an AI-assisted voice of John Lennon, they're going to bring it out later in the year. So you could bring back dead artists.
Yes, we'll be talking about that 9:20 with Ellie Phillips. And you know what? I'm not sure I'm in favour of it. Well, but, call me old-fashioned.
I mean, for instance, there's certain heroes I have in life.
Yeah.
I'd love to see another John Wayne film. I'd love to see another original Star Trek.
Yeah, but John Wayne doesn't get a say in what that film is, and
he won't care. He's dead.
No, but.
And the other thing I would think,
legacy.
They could do things like, for instance, Paul Coyte is with me now. We're going to talk sport in a second, but to watch people who we can no longer see again, Alan Ball playing football, Bobby Moore playing football, George Best playing football. Imagine making up a team of people.
AI football team. Yeah. Gosh, there you go.
And put yourself in there with them.
Yes.
Can you imagine that?
Well, I didn't have any skill. That was a problem.
I didn't either.
Doesn't matter. Just your face on an AI body.
Be there.
That would
you could be Jack Grealish.
That would be work for me. I'd say a night as Jack Grealish. I'd die happy. I would.
Who would you die happy seeing again? I mean, for me, Georgie, and I wasn't made aware that I was watching Genius, but I know I was true genius.
Yeah. For me, it's not going to surprise you because the things yours being Manchester, mine was Glenn Hoddle. And he's the greatest player I ever saw. Just what the side or Big Pat Jennings, seeing Pat Jennings. Fantastic. But they could probably still do it now.
I got a phone call yesterday, somebody who invited me to lunch with Glenn Hoddle.
Really?
And I'm going.
Are you?
Me and Glenn and a couple of other people.
I was going to say, I didn't think he was dead.
No,
Why do you need to bring him back?
Well, it's the end of his career,
Right.
But
He's from the dead. I was like, I didn't know.
Glenn Hoddle did come back from the dead, bless him.
Oh,
he did die.
He actually did.
Okay, just take me out of the sport. There's a reason.
No, you remember what happened?
He had a horrible heart attack in the BT studio. And he was
on his birthday. On his birthday.
Yeah, and he's only, what, 63 or something?
Oh, yeah, he's 66 now. So at the time, 63. Yeah.
Looks well on it.
And,
when I was young and I used to play for the UTV football team, the Ulster Television football team.
Right.
There was this girl who would take pictures of
Hold on,
me.
where did you play? Were you a striker?
Well, I was multi-faceted.
Multifaceted.
Or multi-rubbish. I couldn't work out which thing.
A utility player. You're a Swiss
I did everything
knife.
from goalkeeper to the wing.
Right, that's pretty impressive. Yeah,
this girl used to send me pictures. She would take them from the side of the pitch and she'd send them to me. And her thing was, she said, the only other person that had legs as good as mine was Glenn Hoddle.
Oh, really?
I'll take that as a compliment.
Were the pictures she sent of you or of her that she was sending?
No, they were of me.
Oh, they were
for
of
the
you.
sake. They were of
your
me.
legs. OK, sorry.
Paul's here to talk,
Yes, sir.
to talk sport and to talk football. And let's talk about the Ashes and Moeen Ali.
Very excited about the Ashes. The Ashes starts on Friday. You're going to the Ashes, aren't you?
Yes.
Or maybe.
Yes.
OK.
Yes, I am.
Well, look, it begins Edgbaston Friday. First
How many tests?
Going to be 5.
Right, so I don't know if I'm going this week, but it will be, somewhere.
There's plenty of days. There's plenty of days.
Mm-hmm.
Although, your best bet is if they say, Eamonn, we've got tickets for day 5.
Yeah.
You're going to be lucky if it goes to day 5. The way that Australia play and the way England are playing under Bazball, it's not going to go to 5 days. These are going to be just incredible games. So Moeen Ali retired from international Test cricket and said he's not going to play the Red Bull game anymore a couple of years ago, and then said that's it. So then we had the story of Jack Leach, who then has got injured and he got a nasty injury, spin bowler, not going to be able to play. So Moeen talked about this yesterday, the fact that Ben Stokes called him, or actually texted him, and just texted the word Ashes with a question mark.
Ooh.
And Moeen just texted lol back again because he thought it was a joke.
Yes.
Just thought the whole thing was a joke. And
Maybe he was just saying, Ashes, do you fancy a couple of tickets? Do you fancy
yeah,
going?
I've got to,
We'll go out for the day.
Yeah, apparently Eamonn's not sure whether he's going. You can have those if you want.
You can have his.
But anyway, he's now going to be playing. So, and he says it's the only player or only captain he would have come back for is Ben Stokes, because if ever you're going to come back and
what is it
about
about Ben Stokes that we talked about our heroes who we would like to see, or I wasn't aware that I was watching such genius. Retrospectively, I am when I saw George Best play a number of times. What is it about Ben Stokes?
The thing is, not only he inspires as well as the way that he plays. When we think about the last test against Australia, when he scored over at that, such an important 100, everybody's behind him. He's an exciting player to watch. He's a great player, but also a great captain. There were doubts whether he would make a great captain. And people were saying, oh, you know what, with maybe his history of mental health, is this going to be too much to ask? Because we've seen players in the past that when they've been given the captaincy, I mean, look at Ian Botham. Ian Botham back in 81. Yeah. He came off the back of a tour to the West Indies, then became England captain, playing against Australia. This has turned out to one of the great stories of cricket, is that it just didn't work for him. And then Mike Brearley took over, and then it became Botham's Ashes. Now, Ben Stokes has been the other way round. He has embraced captaincy. Yeah. We've got Brendan McCullum, who is the new coach, Robert Key, who's the managing director. It's just worked, and it's been a new brand of cricket. It's been exciting, and it's one of these things where they say, you know what? Just go out and enjoy the way you play. No pressure. It's not a matter of you might lose your place in the next game. Whereas Australia, we know what they're like. It's going to be a very, very exciting series coming up.
I want to talk transfers very shortly, but let's talk about the internationals for these European, what is the European Championship?
European Championships next year in Germany.
Anyway, it means for a lot of our footballers, the season isn't over yet.
Yeah.
And you know, you've got the City boys, and we were talking about Jack Grealish today celebrating.
Yeah.
OK, the opposition isn't of the highest standard.
No.
Macedonia and Malta. But do you think Jack will play, or how do you think Gareth Southgate will be viewing all these things?
I don't see why not. You know, all the players are there. It's not a matter, I don't think, of saying, well, you know what, the Manchester City boys had a bit of a tough time. He's now the England manager, and he's going to play, I would think, the best side that he can. But they should be easy games. There shouldn't be any problem with that. I'd love to see Jack Grealish play. And you know what? Jack Grealish would love to play as well. And I think the alcohol level is probably about halfway down now. Yeah. So I reckon by the time the matches come at the weekend, I think Jack's going to be absolutely
He'll have dried out.
We love him. Honestly, I know how you feel about Jack.
No. Listen. I know loads of football stories of players on tour and international games as well, and climbing out windows and climbing back in them again, and you know, dodging curfew and all that. And they're very funny stories. They are very funny stories. But as long as the players feel that they weren't advertised it, that's my point. They weren't about advertising it, but you know, each to their own.
Absolutely.
And the transfer window, who have we got? And the Kylian Mbappe.
Yes.
So it looks like PSG won't retain him.
Yep.
So who could afford him?
Well, look, I'll give you a little backstory on that with Kylian Mbappe, because the thing is, he's another one of these situations. There's quite a few players around. They've got a year left on their contract, which means it's either sell now or at the end of the year.
I think Harry Kane falls into that.
Exactly, he's exactly the same. Now, Mbappe had said that he has decided that he will not invoke the contract to be then extended for another year, and then he's happy to leave. Now, it's all now the situation where PSG are thinking, right, well, we didn't know about this. We have to sell him. He's saying, I don't want to go. I'm happy at PSG. But if you work for Paris Saint-Germain, you're going to think, well, we can make £100 million out of this player.
At least.
At least he's arguably the best player in the world.
And you could make £150 million.
You could. Who knows?
Maybe more.
Who knows? Real Madrid are interested. He says he wants to stay, but he's saying that there's lies, that there's leaks that are coming from PSG that are aimed to damage his reputation. But at the end of the day, he said he wants to leave after a year. The reason is because he'll make more money if he leaves on a free, whereas PSG want to cash in on him. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the summer.
Yeah. Who else is...
Mason Mount?
Mason Mount. Oh, yes.
Mason Mount. There's another one. Chelsea. Manchester United linked. Again, there's going to be some discrepancy over how much Chelsea think he's worth, and also when it comes to how much he actually will go for.
Yeah, OK. Well, apparently we're going to go for at that stage. Isabel's kicking me in the leg.
I saw the kick
she's
there.
She's bored.
Yeah.
She's obviously bored.
Right. Sad enough.
OK, so...
Right, do stay with us.
We're
going to discuss the 3 million botched smart meters, which have saddled households all over the country. We're going through the papers. Sean McDonald, Emily Carver, one last time next.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 8:44. Just joining us to go through the papers one last time this morning, we have the broadcast.
Would you stop saying it one last time? You say it all day, one last time.
I don't say it all day because
some
they only
people
say it one last time.
No, but because some people are just tuned in and this is their first time.
Okay. True story.
The papers.
Okay. Well,
another true
perhaps
story.
Perhaps the first time, perhaps the last time. Sean McDonald and
What a
Emily
good
Carver. Always a good time. Sean, let's start with you. Gary Lineker, he got off scot-free for his political tweets, and it turns out the BBC won't amend their policies or at least keeping it so that other presenters, freelance presenters, can tweet freely.
It looks as if they're actually going to sort of modernise it, I think, in their words. So it looks like they're going to allow stars to tweet about politics, provided that they're not working in news reporting. So obviously we saw the chaos that ensued when Gary Lineker spoke out about said that government language was not dissimilar to that used by Germany in the 30s when it came to sort of migration issues.
Oh, yeah, remember
so
that.
this is actually SNP MP John Nicholson, who's part of, I think, the committee, and he has basically revealed ahead of time that it looks as if, the BBC are going to be they're going to be looking to, modernise that. I think it's quite interesting. I think it's a massive shift that we've kind of reached this point, because the discussion that we were having at the time around this story was basically BBC impartiality rules, whether freelance or not, they should be adhered to, and you shouldn't be commenting on things that would basically sway public opinion. So I think it's quite the plate shift.
It's interesting. I mean, I guess it has to be expected that they were going to take this decision, given that they didn't get rid of Gary Lineker or give him any repercussions or bans or anything. You wonder if there was a lot of pressure because of the backlash. I mean, he came off air. No one watched Match of the Day that night. They were all watching Patrick.
I'm perplexed by this, though, because if Gary had been tweeting, stop the boats, it's an invasion on our southern border, I think he would have got the boot and told not to do it. So I think there is a bit of a double standard. If your views generally are sort of aligned with the BBC's sort of liberal metropolitan approach to worldview, then I think you're probably going to get away with it more than if you were going to start, I don't know, writing right-wing things. What do you think, Eamonn?
With regards to viewing figures, did we not see record figures because everybody was watching it out of curiosity? What it's going to be like?
They had record viewing figures that night. What can I say? Right, if I was head of contracts at BBC, I'd say, so here's the deal, Gary. £1.7 million a year, and just this little clause in your contract, you can't tweet about things or will not bother. And I think most people, I think everybody would sign. I like Gary Lineker, I think he's fine, but Match of the Day is not essential to Gary Lineker.
But he didn't say it on Match of the Day, did he? He said it on Twitter.
No, I'm saying about losing him. So if you lost Gary...
Oh, I see what you mean.
There's the other presenters.
Would his argument be that he's not saying it on Match of the Day? Because I think if he goes on Match of the Day and looks down the barrel...
nobody's expecting that. I mean, that's like hijacking the airwaves. But it is an interesting thing. I mean, personally, I think if you're a chef, you should be allowed your views no matter what it's on, so you could apply the same to being a football presenter. I don't think, though, you can be a news presenter And
that's what they've said.
Yeah. So I think if you're working in sport, if you're working in entertainment, then you're able to. But if it's news, then it's just a flat out no. You can't be commenting, which I think is perfectly reasonable.
What I think's good is it's one on the eye to the cancel culture as well.
It's a tricky one because Gary Lineker is now a political commentator. He's not a sports presenter who sometimes says one or two tweets about politics. He very much is, in his own right, a political commentator now. So it's a tricky one.
But he's not delivering the news. He's talking about
he's not delivering
who scored
the
a
news.
goal in a game with the ball.
Although he did comment on the football being in Qatar and things like that on air, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, there we go.
Emily, let's talk about this pandemic inquiry. It got underway yesterday, lessons to be learned, and the conclusions initially yesterday seemed to suggest that we were all being distracted by coping with Brexit, which enraged Brexiteers.
Yes, it did. I mean, this has been sort of pushed back from the front pages because of everything that's been happening, particularly in Nottingham, of course. But it has been quite interesting to see what the KC in charge of the inquiry has been saying. He did say Brexit meant that the government was not prepared for the pandemic. Lots of pro-Brexit people have come out to say this is absolutely ludicrous, not least because of the vaccine rollout, which they say was made quicker by the fact we were outside the European Union. Jacob Rees-Mogg, he said die-hard Remainers think that everything is caused by Brexit, which is delusional. Unfortunately, this foolish comment starts the inquiry off on the wrong foot. Patrick O'Flynn comes in as well, Paul Bristow, another Tory MP. Lots of people have been saying this is ridiculous, this makes the inquiry political. I think that there's probably a little bit of truth, though, to the fact that so much Whitehall time was being spent on Brexit.
I think even Brexiteers can admit that there was chaos in the immediate aftermath, whether it was the queues at Dover, whether it was the problems in Northern Ireland. We did see huge problems. A lot of people say, actually, Remainers complain that COVID distracted from really being able to assess the impact of Brexit. So you can have it either way, really. You can argue it either way.
Exactly, but it does bring into question sort of what questions are being asked by this inquiry, what is the point of it? Other countries have already finished their inquiries, but ours is expected to go on for years. Will anything come of it?
Sean, here's a story. We talk about these two innocent, lovely people killed in Nottingham yesterday, Grace and Barnaby, and another girl whose picture I see, and it makes me very sad, Ellie Edwards, 26 years of age, shot twice in the head on Merseyside, and this was around Christmas time. So tell us what has happened here.
Absolutely shocking. This was in Christmas Eve. We have Connor Chapman, who is basically up in court, and he has apparently fired at a crowd with a Cold War-era submachine gun. Miss Edwards, or Elle Edwards, the 26-year-old, as she says, she stepped outside for a cigarette with two people who were the intended targets. And I think the guy Chapman has been lying in wait for about 3 hours waiting for them to come out, and he's just sprayed indiscriminately and very tragically. You know, Elle has been...
Twice in the head.
Twice in the head. Yeah. Christmas Eve, just enjoying a night out, and something like that happens. It's just unthinkable to be getting that news, that chap at the door. If you're her family.
Saw her family arrive yesterday at court. I mean, a beautiful girl, beautiful family. They will never be the same again.
One of the ways in which it was found as well is there was a SIM card which was connected to the car, as you'll get nowadays with cars that have smart connectivity, and they were able to trace it to his SIM card movements as well. His defence was that, or his claim was that I must have left my phone in the car, so there's an admission of a link to the vehicle that was used. It was eventually burned out. One of his friends had booked him a ferry from Portsmouth to Santander in the north of Spain. But he cancelled that when he realised that he was about to be caught and the net closed in. And he's denying that it was him, but you know, all evidence is pointing to the fact that it absolutely was.
Let's move on to The Sun. And these are obese clinics for large children. 10 more of them have been set up by the NHS. Now, I would think that's a good thing.
Well, I mean, I don't know how effective these clinics are. If they are, then it is a great thing that these kids are being seen to. I think the problem is sometimes when people intervene in children's health, it doesn't always last, but that's the same with all of us, isn't it? Whenever that someone's put on a diet, it doesn't always last more than a year or so, but it does just demonstrate how bad this problem is. And it's got worse during the pandemic because obviously people weren't playing sports, children weren't playing sports, and they probably were sat on the sofa a bit more and just eating snacks and things. But also it's the question of who's responsible. Parents, presumably, in my view. I think sometimes parents are very neglectful and just sort of, you know, hush their kids by giving them a big packet of sweets or a big packet of chocolate. And sometimes a treat, particularly for low-income families, can be a trip to McDonald's because they can't afford to, you know, give them dancing lessons or swimming lessons or whatever, and it's easy and cheap to just say, oh, here's the McDonald's or here's a sweetie.
When I was young, there was breakfast, there was lunch, and there was dinner. There were 3 meals a day. But now it's just like...
Never-ending grazing.
Never-ending grazing.
Everyone's just a bit greedy, aren't they? But the government are doing silly things like banning buy one, get one free, and I hope we're bringing this down.
Sorry to interrupt. We've got to leave it there. Emily and Sean, thank you both
have a good day. Thank you very much indeed.
Stay with us. We'll have all the latest for you on that unfolding tragedy from Nottingham. Tributes pouring in for the 2 teenage victims. First, though, here's your midweek forecast with Alex Deakin.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Another fantastic day if you like it warm and sunny, but not so good if you're a hay fever sufferer, with grass pollen levels again very high across a good chunk of the country. The pressure is high to the north of the UK, allowing a bit of an easterly breeze to pick up. It's made for a fresher start in the east compared to recent mornings. It's been another very warm and humid night in the west, and another very warm and sunny day for the vast majority. Only the very small chance of seeing an isolated heavy shower breaking out today. Most places just seeing blue skies for most of the day. But as I said, UV levels are also very high, so you need the sunscreen on, and grass pollen levels are also high or very high. Temperatures are also pretty high, not quite as high as yesterday, but still getting into the high 20s in the south and widely into the mid-20s. The eastern side a little cooler because of that breeze, which may just generate a little bit more mist on some eastern coasts. We could see some of that drifting inland overnight tonight, but again, most places just dry and clear, and perhaps a little cooler for most places. Temperatures dipping into the low teens, and further west again warmer, but not as warm as the night just gone. Perhaps a little bit more comfortable. So we're just seeing those humidity levels dropping off a little bit. Again, most places looking fine. Tomorrow, plenty of sunshine around. Perhaps, again, 1 or 2 showers breaking out here and there. Very isolated, but where they do occur with the heat and humidity, we may see them turning into thunderstorms. But the vast majority, dry and sunny again tomorrow. Again, temperatures just a degree or so down, but still warm for the time of year, getting into the mid-20s pretty widely. That'll continue into Friday, but as we head towards the weekend, just an increasing chance of seeing a bit more cloud and some showers drifting in from the west, but temperatures mostly staying in the mid-20s.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The second victim in the Nottingham attacks is named as 19-year-old Grace Kumar.
The time is 9 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 14th of June. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster. And here's what's leading the news this morning.
Tributes have been paid to the students Grace Kumar and Barnaby Webber, who were killed during the attacks in Nottingham yesterday.
We're here at the spot where 3 other victims were run over by the suspect's stolen van. The police have still to establish a motive behind these attacks.
Boris Johnson has hit out at the Privileges Committee, calling their report nonsense and urging them to publish it. It comes after they received last-minute representations from Johnson's legal team, which will likely delay publishings of the findings.
The UK economy grew by 0.2% in April, bouncing back after a fall in March. It's due to stronger consumer spending in shopping and hospitality, and the Chancellor says the government must stick to its plan to protect family budgets.
The head of ITV, Carolyn McCall, will face a grilling by MPs, where she'll be quizzed on the broadcaster's approach to safeguarding and complaint handling in the wake of the Philip Schofield scandal.
And back from the dead on a new track, Beatles fans could now hear new material from the late, great John Lennon.
Yes, Sir Paul McCartney has had a mixed reaction after revealing that he's used artificial intelligence to extricate John Lennon's vocals from an old demo to create the last Beatles record due for release later this year. I'll be bringing you the full lowdown on that in the next half hour.
That's incredible. I wish I had artificial intelligence. Wish I had some intelligence of any description, so we could sit here and people say he's really smart, but it's artificial what he's doing there. But that's what will come in years to come. They will buy our bodies, Isabel. We can be in bed and we can look at TV and there we would be on screen talking.
Yeah,
it wouldn't even
I'm
be
okay
us.
with that. Yeah, that's
I'd
fine.
be okay with that. So we could license our bodies.
We could say have our body and put whatever words you want into it.
No, I'm not OK with that.
You're not OK with that?
No, but we do want to know what words you want us to read out. Tell us your thoughts. You can get in touch for one last half hour of the show. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Our lead story today, terribly, terribly sad. We broke it here on GB News yesterday morning, just over 24 hours ago. And two 19-year-old students have now been named, Grace Kumar and Barnaby Webber. They are two of the victims in the attacks in Nottinghamshire in the early hours of yesterday morning.
Well, a man in his 50s was also murdered, with police believing the suspect stole his van and then used that to drive into three further members of the public.
Well, he hasn't been named yet, so therefore we don't have a photograph of him. We do know a 31-year-old man is in police custody. Police say they're keeping an open mind regarding whatever this man's motive may have been.
Well, let's go live to our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, who joins us from Nottingham this morning. It's a student area where the two teenagers were attacked yesterday. Tributes, has to be said, pouring in. We've heard from the hockey England team coming out in support of Grace, who played for them under 16 and under 18, as well as apparently her cricket club. She was a big cricketer, as indeed was Barnaby, and his family this morning releasing a statement saying complete devastation is not enough to describe our pain. It really gives a sense of the human element in all of this tragedy, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, it is utterly devastating to know that, of course, two 19-year-olds just in their first year at university literally had their whole lives ahead of them, and who knows what these two bright young individuals might have achieved in that life, but it was so cruelly snatched away from them in the early hours of yesterday morning. They'd been at the Prism nightclub, like so many students do, of course, enjoying their extracurricular activities there, just heading home towards the area where they lived, as you say, an area that was really full of students when, of course, they were attacked and stabbed to death. 4 separate crime scenes, because, of course, that man in his 50s also stabbed to death, and then the pedestrians that were knocked over just at this spot where I'm standing. The road's reopened, but the investigation is still underway. And as you mentioned there, Isabel, the family of Barnaby Webber releasing a very emotional, impactful statement about the loss they're suffering. And in that statement, they say complete devastation is not enough to describe our pain and loss at the senseless murder of our son. Barnaby Philip John Webster was a beautiful, brilliant, bright young man with every fit thing in life to look forward to, a talented and passionate cricketer who was over the moon to have been selected for his university cricket team. At 19, he was just at the start of his journey into adulthood and was developing into a wonderful young man. As parents, we are enormously proud of everything he achieved and all the plans he'd made. His brother is bereft beyond belief. At this time, we ask for the privacy as a family to be allowed time to process and to grieve. Absolutely, you can understand that, and I'm sure that Grace's family will issue a similar statement. And as you say, we're still waiting to get a name for that third person who was stabbed to death, a man in his 50s. Now, in the last hour, I spoke live to Ross Murphy, local here in Nottingham. He'd been heading to the gym very early in the morning, just got off a bus when he heard the sound of the victims here being run over. This is what he told me.
I came off the 36 bus about 50 yards that way. As I did, I heard a loud bang. I thought nothing of it really. There's plenty of people about this time in the morning. I walked towards McDonald's for a quick coffee, as I usually do, before I go to the gym. And I saw somebody lying half off the road and pavement opposite McDonald's, and still thought nothing of it because there's a lot of people like beggars, etc. in this area in the morning. I thought somebody just collapsed. Anyway, I went in McDonald's and nobody in there thought much about it. And then about 5 minutes later, I think it's Leanne, one of the cleaners, said there's been a hit and run.
Well, the police investigation is continuing apace, but as yet there is no word on the motive for these attacks. GB News, however, can reveal that the prime suspect in this case is a 31-year-old West African migrant with a history of violence and mental health issues. Nothing further on that in terms of his legal status in this country, or indeed whether any indications of that violence were flagged up to authorities before this attack.
Right, thank you very much indeed. Well, we can go now straight to Labour's Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting. And first of all, we have to start, Shadow Health Secretary, by getting your reaction to, well, the more details we're hearing about the victims in this senseless murder in Nottingham.
Yeah, thanks very much. I mean, first and foremost, my heart goes out to the families of those who've lost their lives, and also those who are still waiting to hear news of those who were injured. It's an unspeakably awful tragedy. I don't think any of us can imagine what those families are going through. Not to mention the city of Nottingham and the students of Nottingham University. We'll wait and hear from the police about where their inquiries take them, the motivations of the attacker, and we might be able to draw some further conclusions then. But it's just an awful situation, and I must say, having heard that statement being read out on air this morning, you just cannot imagine what the family are going through. And I think the Barnaby's family releasing those pictures, I think it underlines the human tragedy and impact of this situation. It's just awful.
Awful, just such youth, such talent, their whole lives ahead of them. And thank you very much indeed, Shadow Health Secretary, for your tribute for Grace and Barnaby. But you're here to talk about, there's this AI conference this week, and both parties, the Labour and the Conservatives, have been talking about their vision for AI and what to do about it. Now, here's a very interesting thing that I know you want to talk about. Only one company in the world still makes pagers, right? Now, why is that important? Why is that significant in your role as the Shadow Health Secretary? Tell us more.
Because despite repeated promises to purge the pager and axe the facts, the NHS is still using technology that most of us thought was consigned to kind of the 90s and the noughties, and the NHS hasn't kept up pace. And I think that would be important for us to deal with in any context or situation. But when the NHS is going through what is objectively the worst crisis in its history, it's even more important that we make the changes that are needed to get both better value for taxpayers' money, because the public finances are in a mess, and also better outcomes for patients. If you take breast cancer diagnosis, for example, using AI, we can free up about 30% of capacity for radiologists who are in short supply, enabling them to do more work that only they can do, and also get 16% better outcomes for patients, which is the most important thing in terms of
the only thing I would say to you, Shadow Health Secretary, is if the government was going around buying fancy telephones and communication devices and iPads and all sorts of things, you guys could be the first to stand up and say, we need cardiograph machines, we don't need iPads.
Well, I think it is important. I mean, talk to the staff of the NHS. I'll tell you what, the biggest critics of creaking IT infrastructure are the people that are suffering with it. And, you know, for example, Labour's candidate in Glasgow South West, he's a surgeon. And Zabir was telling me that, you know, he writes out his notes, hands them over to be scanned in so that they're on the patient's file for use in the future. He goes back, clicks on the PDF file, all the pages are there, but in completely the wrong order. So there he is, a very good, very qualified surgeon, printing off sheets of paper and reorganising them. What a waste of his time and energy that could be better spent elsewhere. And he is just one of, I suspect, hundreds of thousands of examples of everyday staff being frustrated, wanting to bang their head against the dilapidated technology they're working with. And we suffer as patients as a result. I mean, lots of us have got stories. In fact, I was just talking to a colleague this week, had to take her daughter into hospital for an appointment. She has all the details about where she needs to be and what time. Gets there, they look at the letter and say, I don't know why this was sent, because this is a telephone consultation. What are you doing here? So I think we all know that however brilliant the people who work in the NHS are, they are working in a pretty inefficient system. And, particularly when the public finances are stretched and are in a mess, we've got to think about how we make best use of it.
Right, which leads me on to the junior doctors' strike. They've walked out again this morning, 7 o'clock, 72 hours. Would you say that this is a good use of their time and energy being on the picket line? It's going to see the cancellation of lots of routine appointments and indeed have knock-ons for the likes of A&E and things like that?
I mean, given the impact it's going to have in terms of delayed and cancelled appointments and the disruption to patients, I wish they were at work today. And by the way, so do they. I think the problem we've got is the lack of a table for them to go and negotiate around with government. And my message to Rishi Sunak is, if you've got an hour to spend with Boris Johnson negotiating gongs and peerages for Tory cronies, can't you at least spend at least an hour trying to resolve the junior doctors' dispute?
Well, they have tried, in fairness, and they've brought in third party in all of this, and they're resolutely asking for 35%. Now, what would Labour offer? The government's got 5%. You clearly have to say where you would be in all of this.
I don't think they've brought in the third-party arbitration. I mean, that wouldn't be a bad idea, actually, I think, to resolve the dispute at this stage. If the Prime Minister can't sort it out, and I think calling in ACAS isn't a bad idea. I've said to the junior doctors, quite honestly, look, if I said I was going to deliver 35% overnight, you shouldn't believe me. Look at the state of the public finances. And I'm not going to be one of those politicians who says one thing before an election and then lets people down afterwards. We'd be willing to negotiate, and people can judge us on our record. When we were last in government, we got the economy growing, which meant we could invest in our public services and pay without hiking up people's taxes. But we are being pretty hard-headed at the moment, and we're getting lots of criticism for ruling out spending on this, that or the other. It's not because we're being particularly mean-fisted. It's because we want to make sure the promises we make are promises that we can keep. And I've got to be honest about the state of the public finances. The Conservatives are leaving them in an almighty mess. So I think we've got to just be careful about the promises we make. We've
heard this morning growth at 0.2% for April. The economy is growing under the Conservatives.
It's pretty poor, though, I must say. And inflation's not coming down as fast as we would like. And as for interest rates, and look, I'm not asking people to get their violins out for me, but I renewed my mortgage this week. So it's up for renewal in a couple of months' time. I'm going to be paying hundreds of pounds more each month. Now, I'll cope, not asking for any sympathy. But I'm really worried about those people who are facing a similar situation, who are keeping their head just above water. Yeah. And are now going to find themselves drowning. Those are the people I'm really worried about. And that's why we're being so careful about the promises we make, because we've seen where reckless spending decisions get us with the crash that we saw with the Conservatives' mini-budget. We're not going to make the same mistake with a Labour version. We're going to be much more hard-headed. And I don't know how much time we've got left, but I didn't want to go without saying one more thing, which is to send my love to Anne Diamond. I was, having gone through kidney cancer myself, I was really moved by Anne's interview at the weekend. I wish her all the best with her treatment for breast cancer, and it was brilliant to see her back on our screens at the weekend. I grew up watching Anne Diamond on telly, and I hope to continue watching on our screens for many, many years to come.
Well, thanks for saying that, Wes. Lovely. Very, very much appreciated. So we axe the facts and we do what with the pagers?
Axe the facts, purge the pages, and let's use this revolution in artificial intelligence, machine learning that's being built here in Britain. Okay. Let's put it to use in the NHS.
Good man, Wes Streeting. That's what he has to say. What do you have to say about purge the pages and axe the faxes? Let us know. Let us know. Cindy, you listening to that conversation we've just had with Wes Streeting there. And you see, Cindy, I think that amazing that only one company in the world still manufactures pagers. The NHS is estimated to own 1 in 10 pagers still in use in the world, right? And a new pager costs up to £400, meaning the NHS has spent as much as 32 million on its pagers over the past few years.
It's absolutely shocking. I mean, anyone who's been in a hospital will know that actually mobile phone signal can be patchy and that sometimes you're not meant to use it so that it doesn't interfere with the equipment. So I can see why pagers were brought in the first instance. But 4 years ago, the NHS said they wanted to, as Wes Streeting said, purge the pager. 4 years ago, and nothing has been done, or at least not enough has been done.
I can see, though,
I
just feel the pressure that if you're faced with a budget in a hospital and you say, oh, we're going to get fancy phones and computers and iPads and things, people are saying, I need a stethoscope, I need a blood pressure monitor.
And also there is the argument that I have heard from doctors about saying actually sometimes it takes longer to type things into an iPad when you're trying to walk around a ward than just scribble something on a piece of paper, and actually scanning it into a PDF is more user-friendly.
And sometimes these new computer systems aren't necessarily the best. If you think back to the Post Office, the Royal Mail scandal that's going through the courts at the moment, that's because of a new computer system, right? That was rushed through. People said that this doesn't work, there were flaws in it that management didn't see. So if people think that pagers work, you can see why they don't want to, you know, fix the wheel, as it were. But it is ridiculous that they had an ambition to get rid of it 4 years ago.
What you want is Dr. McCoy in Star Trek. He just does this to you, and then he looks and he goes, oh, sclerosis of the liver caused by alcohol drinking, too much coming on. No, I'm just saying that's what they would do. They would know straight away what is wrong with you.
What they'd say to you, Eamonn.
What's Andrew and Bev going to say from 9:30? Let's find out.
Bev and Andrew, what have you got?
We're going to talk about Nottingham, of course.
Yeah.
The aftermath of Nottingham, of course. Those images on the front pages of the two students, 19.
Heartbreaking.
Really is.
Yeah, I've been quite upset by that this morning, listening to you guys read out the statement. Of course, I have a son exactly the same age. So we'll be talking a little bit more about what happened yesterday. Mark White is still in Nottingham for us, of course, this morning. And also a story that we were going to cover yesterday, but obviously everything got overshadowed by events in Nottingham, which is about the lady who was jailed for the abortion during lockdown. We're going to be having a discussion about that.
And don't forget Carolyn McCall, the boss of ITV, before that select committee of MPs to talk about what they did or didn't do and what they did badly in the aftermath of Philip Schofield. So that should be quite interesting. We'll be there live for that.
Very much indeed, guys. We're talking music when we go back. Music by famous people, except it's not really by them. They're dead, and then they can get... Anyway, it's artificial intelligence.
Again.
Ellie Phillips talking about that, and why the Beatles are back after this.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us. From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Go back to 1980, John Lennon dies, big event that year. But Beatles fans say...
Reincarnation.
Yeah, he may be dead, but he's not gone.
Resurrection, yes.
Yeah.
Paul McCartney behind this one. He got handed a tape by Yoko Ono. He now owns it, so he thinks he can bring him back from the dead. Let's get all the details, all the scoop on this from Ellie Phillips, who joins us in the studio. A bit of a moral dilemma?
I don't think so on this one. Usually I would. When it comes to AI, people get really panicked because they think, is it fake voice? Is it a robot voice? This is John Lennon's voice. So it's been taken from a recording that he did on a demo before he died. It was actually recorded in 1978, so, oh my gosh, so long ago. And they've used AI to separate his vocals from the guitar that he recorded it with, so that they can mix it
Purify them.
Purify it, get a
So
good
this could have been a scratchy old record or a broken up old tape or whatever it is. And it's amazing. What they can do.
Yeah.
But where does it stop?
Yeah.
And, you know, does that now mean that people like John Wayne that you idolise could be, you know, resurrected as well?
It sure does,
but without their
Pilgrim.
creative control.
Exactly. And I think that's the point with this. This is obviously, you've got, you know, Paul McCartney, who's overseeing
Excuse me,
this
something
project.
just come into my head. Do you know it was 44 years yesterday since John Wayne died?
Was it?
Yes.
My goodness me.
No, sorry, it just come
Happy
into my head.
birthday.
And you think I've no intelligence, and that's not even artificial intelligence.
That's real intelligence in your brain,
Yeah.
exactly. But I think you're right. It's the fact that it's the creative control there is being taken by a Beatle. The
And
Beatles enforce.
Who's making the money?
The profits will go
Paul
to the
McCartney.
Beatles, so it will go to, you know, the offspring and kind of that type of estate, if you will.
Estate.
But also it speaks into this idea of holograms. So you look at avatars, but again, that was their creative control. But then you look at what they did with the Whitney Houston hologram tour, which she passed away. That was her family, you know, saying, we're going to do this, and it didn't go down well. It didn't look like her. And that was problematic because that was an idea of what she could have performed like and what she could have sounded like. Whereas this use of the technology, I think, is really clever. And I think Beatles fans will love it because it gives them an extra record. What they're saying is going to be the final Beatles record.
Do you ever sit back and think the world which we know
Is going.
well, it's going to change so much in the next 20 years.
Yeah.
When you think of what the world was like in, say, 1990
Yeah.
and what it's like today, but then how much it's definitely going to change in the next 20
Is it for the
years.
better?
Well, it's funny, I was speaking to someone the other day and they said, I remember when a calculator was this huge, crazy, mad invention, and we were like, wow, this is so futuristic technology. Technology's only going to speed up, and there are some good things about that. Think about the medical advances, surgical advances, amazing. So I think used in the right way, it's okay. I just don't want it to get so far that it takes jobs away and that it takes away creative licence.
Ellie, thank you. We've got to take you away at this stage and say goodbye to you. Thank you for coming in.
So welcome.
Folks, thank you for watching and staying with us and listening to us throughout the programme today. Apparently our radio growth is very, very good. More and more people
We've had good
realise.
figures the last few weeks. Please do keep
But it's
tuning
not
in.
really us. It's
we
just,
never take it for
it's
granted.
a computer pretending to be us
You would.
on radio.
You'd be in
You
bed,
don't
really.
even know.
That's it from us for this morning. We'll be back from 6 o'clock. Do stay after the break. Up next, Bev and Andrew with To The Point.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the